Hey everybody, my name is Jesse Collins, and I want to tell you all about my show, the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast, here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. On the Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast, we do a thorough analysis on the biggest issues and trends within the pro wrestling industry. We talk a lot about pro wrestling media, we talk a lot about fan culture and wrestling's place within general pop culture, and we talk about the broader influences that are shaping the way we discuss and analyze the pro wrestling industry. We've had some of the brightest minds in the pro wrestling intelligentsia on the show, including WrestleNomics host Brandon Thurston, both Rich Craich and Joe Lanza from the Flagship Wrestling Podcast, Trevor Dame from the Through the Years podcast, and a whole lot more. This isn't a show for hot takes. It's not a show recapping the latest episode of television. This is a show focusing on the biggest topics in pro wrestling and doing a deep dive on the real stories behind the surface level analysis you might find elsewhere. The Gentleman's Wrestling Podcast is available wherever you get your podcasts, and we'd really appreciate it if you gave us a try. Thanks.
Hey kids, do you like wrestling? Well, we like wrestling too. We are Shake Them Ropes here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Myself and Chris Novembrino kind of doing a lazy river of wrestling criticism, going through the news and whatever happened in stateside television wrestling. And also, you know what? Sometimes we just like to watch old stuff and talk about that too. Love for you to give us a listen. If you haven't already, we are Shake Them Ropes here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
What do you guys want to talk about?
You are listening to the Flagship Podcast with your hosts, Joe Lanza.
They should throw sardines at these people. the guy that said, how is it that you're able to be so great? They should have thrown him a fucking sardine to catch in his mouth. And you know, that's what they, here's a treat,
And Rich Craich.
There's somebody listening right now that has never listened to us before and probably will never listen again. So hello and goodbye. You should try us out though. We're pretty good. So maybe stick with us for another hour. After an hour, if you don't like the vibe, hit the bricks. We don't want you anyway. And we are live on the Flagship Podcast. I am Rich. He is Joe. Joe, what's happening? How are you? Long time no talk.
You want to do some baseball trivia to start off the show?
Baseball trivia to start off the show. Why not? Yeah, why not? It's a 2014 throwback show with the topics that we got today. Yeah, let's talk some baseball. Let's do it.
I'm going to give you a baseball trivia question.
Okay.
You're a baseball fan. You know your baseball,
yeah,
right?
Yeah. Less so than I was years ago because of the White Sox that beat it out of me. But yeah, no. Still a baseball fan. Still enjoy the game of baseball.
Who was the last switch hitting American League MVP?
The last switch hitting American League MVP. Wow.
The last switch hitter to win the American League Most Valuable Player Award.
Wow. I gotta imagine we're.
Well, let me help you out. National League would be easy because you'd probably eventually come up with Chipper Jones.
Right. Or Pete Rose or whatever.
American League.
Yeah, it gets a little tougher. My initial first thought was, and I forget if this guy was actually a switch hitter. I'm between two guys. Can I give you two guys and you can let me know if I'm okay. I'm gonna cheat and give you two guys. I know Eddie Murray at some point had to win an MVP, right?
Eddie Murray. Who's your other guy?
My other guy was Roberto Alomar, but I forget if Roberto Alomar was a switch hitter or if he won I think he won an MVP, right? Am I making that up or no? That Roberto Alomar won an MVP?
Well, I can tell you that, shockingly, Eddie Murray never won an MVP.
What? Okay, that's shit. That's bullshit.
Top five times, runner-up twice, and he did win a Rookie of the Year.
But Eddie Murray never won an MVP. Wow. Okay.
And that is one hell of a guess because anytime there's a switch hitter question, you may as well throw Eddie Murray out there.
Yeah, exactly as I did right here. It's like, and nobody's like that good at doing it anymore. I think is kind of the setup here. Potentially, maybe somebody this year is, and that's the setup here. But yeah, like Eddie Murray is like always one that people bring up of like, yeah, they don't make him like Eddie Murray anymore. And then there's a clip of him hitting from both sides of the plate and with great power and longevity too. That Eddie Murray did it. So yeah, he was the first person that came to my mind of guy that I definitely know is recent-ish. Like what, he retired in 1998 or whatever, but that's recent enough that probably was an MVP, but now I'm learning that somehow he was never an MVP, which is absolutely wild.
Roberto Alomar was indeed a switch hitter.
He never won MVP though, right?
Never an MVP. He was a AL Championship Series MVP. He was an All-Star Game MVP.
Did he win a World Series MVP or something? Did I maybe mix that up?
AL Championship Series MVP.
Okay, just that.
So
who
the
cares
answer,
about that?
Rich, and this is a great bar trivia question because it's sort of a trick question. The answer is Vita Blue.
Vita
passed
Blue.
Away. That's right. Who passed away 2 days ago at the age of 73. But Vita Blue, of course, was a pitcher, so nobody would think of him as being a switcher.
Dirty. You did me dirty here. Then I was like, is it all the way to Mickey Mantle? Is that like you're trying to tell me? It's like, it's been this long. Mickey Mantle was last to do it.
If you don't count Vita Blue, I do believe it's Mickey Mantle.
You probably have to go all the way back to Mickey, right?
You go back to Mickey if he won one more.
Don't fucking tell me that he didn't win an MVP. I know he won a goddamn. He better have.
Yes, he did. Mickey Mantle
definitively won an MVP.
A surefire MVP winner. Although the famous prank call to Mike Francesa disputed that Mickey Mantle ever won a Triple Crown because how could he win a Triple Crown, Mike? He isn't a horse. But
which I'm sure he took in stride. Well. Yeah, I'm sure he took that in stride and laughed it off and just went to moved on with his life. But
yeah, the answer is Vita Blue, who won the MVP as a pitcher and the Cy Young in 1971, 24-8, 1.82 ERA, led the league with 8 shutouts, had a WHIP under 1, so a well-deserved Cy Young and MVP for Vita Blue in 1971, who passes away at the age of 73 on May 6th. So actually, it was about almost a week ago now at this point, but he's always the answer to that trick question, trivia question that you can get people with, especially if you're betting them money. Yeah, I'm gonna have to keep that one. Yeah, I'm gonna have to keep that one in the holster there because that's good. That's good. I could see that starting a fight though. Like I was like, yeah, that's kind of tricky. But if there's money on the line, a little bit of little liquor involved, I could see people getting a little upset by that because it's a trick question. It's a trick. You know what I mean? Like your answer is a pitcher, but it's not wrong, but I get it. It's not wrong.
It's not wrong. Did he? Because I know he played for the Giants later in his career. Is that when he did the switch hitting, or are you going back to like he could do it in the minors or whatever? Did he actually switch hit in the majors?
No, he took 618 at bats in the major leagues as a switch hitter.
Wow, that's pretty cool because he did that like later in his career too. If for those that don't know about Vita Blue, which I'm assuming is most of you listening, that he was an Oakland Athletic first and foremost, and I think everybody probably remembers him from the A's. But then he had a second leg of his career with the Giants. He just went across the bay over to the Giants. I think he briefly was with the Royals somewhere. Royals, yeah, I think it was the Royals that he was there for a little while. But I know that was like the last half of his career that he was a Giant. So that's kind of wild that he was like, I could switch it too, like that. You'd think you wouldn't like add that to your repertoire as in your 30s or whatever. But good for him.
Nah, he broke in before the DH in 1969 with Oakland. He was drafted in 67 by the Kansas City A's, but they moved to Oakland before he ever got to the majors. So he played in the American League before the DH for a few years too. So he's got plenty of at-bats.
Oh, okay. All right. That makes sense then.
So in 71, the DH came in 72, I think, or 73 was the first year of the DH, 73. So that year he won the MVP. I got his.
What was he batting that year? Was he a worthy MVP candidate? Yeah, terrible as most pitchers are.
Nice, terrible hitter, but he had 121 plate appearances. So that was pre-DH. He hit 118. So
no. But what was his? Don't tell me what his bad. What was his on base though, Joe? It's about avoiding outs, Joe. Not getting hits. It's about avoiding outs.
He did. He did draw 4 walks that year for
there you go. Give the man his credit. All right, see?
For a 167 on base
right, it's about avoiding outs, not about getting hit. So there you go. Kept the clock moving. Kept the clock moving.
You mentioned he went to San Francisco later in his career. There's an interesting story behind that because we're going to get to wrestling, I promise. But when the Oakland dynasty fell apart in the late 70s, Reggie Jackson went to the Baltimore Orioles, and then the next year they lost a bunch of free agents, Sal Bando and Gene Tennis and Raleigh Fingers. And Charlie Finley, he knew it was falling apart. He was attempting to sell off his players, and the commissioner had to keep stepping in to stop him from selling off the players for the for the competitive balance of the game and all those sorts of things. So he tried to sell Vita Blue during the 77 season, and the commissioner reneged it. So in the offseason, the 77 offseason, the A's traded Vita Blue to the Cincinnati Reds, for a minor league first baseman who wasn't a real prospect at all, and a gigantic lump sum of money. And the trade sat and lasted long enough for Vita Blue to end up in the Reds media guide for the 1978 season. But then again, the commissioner stepped in and he sent Vita Blue back to the A's. And then they had to rework another trade, this time with the Giants. And he got traded, I believe, for 7 men, which to this day is the all-time record in terms of a trade for one player. He got traded for 7 players to the San Francisco Giants. But he could have been a Red. And the thing about that is, in 77, the Reds won the World Series in 75 and 76 with the Big Red Machine.
Right.
In 77, those teams were built around, obviously, one of the greatest lineups in the history of baseball and an awesome bullpen. Pedro Barbone, Clay Carroll, Raleigh Eastwick, people like that. But their starting pitchers were always... You're a big baseball fan. Can you name a starting pitcher from the Big Red Machine? You probably can.
No, you can rail off, most members of the Big Red Machine, but I couldn't tell you one of their fucking pitchers. No,
you could probably run off the whole lineup, but you can't name a starting pitcher.
They're kind of like the Indians of the mid '90s or whatever. The 1995 Cleveland. You can get Manny and Tomei and Roberto and all these guys, but then it's like Charles Nagy and then I forget who else. You know what I mean? It really kind of falls off a cliff there.
So even a big baseball fan like you is going to struggle to come up with Fred Norman, Don Gullett, people like that. So in 77, the Reds swing a trade for Tom Seaver. Okay, they bring Seaver in 77. He has a great year. They missed the playoffs. They trade for Vita Blue in the offseason. Man, they're going to stack the top of that rotation with Tom Seaver and Vita Blue.
Sounds good.
That line, Now, listen, Tony Perez was gone by then because they traded Tony Perez away because they replaced him with Dan Dreesen, who was a big prospect at the time. Never quite lived up. But the rest of the lineup was still there, and you had Tom Seaver and Vita Blue, but then they had to send Vita Blue back to the A's, and then they missed the playoffs by 2.5 games. A lot of Reds fans to this day are bitter that trade got annulled by the commissioner because they think they would have won the division that year in 78. And then who knows what happens in 79 and 80 because Vita Blue was 28 years old at the time of that trade. And Tom Seaver was still in the middle of his prime. So that is a sore spot for Reds fans because they could have finally had a top of a rotation that kicks some ass to go along with that disgustingly great Big Red Machine lineup. So I only bring that up because you brought up that Vita Blue, spent the back half of his career with the Giants, but only because that trade with the Reds was disallowed. So who knows what could have happened. They could have won a couple more World Series, but didn't work out that way.
It was kind of a whirlwind. That the late 70s in baseball was kind of a whirlwind of the commissioner stepping in and stopping trades and stopping free agent signings and kind of manipulating the league a little bit more than you would probably want a commissioner to do. And I know some of the ones that he did, some were, defended and considered that was probably the good move. But yeah, a lot of other ones were pretty tough to swallow. But I guess
to be fair though, Charlie Finley was nuts.
Yes.
Owner of the A's. I mean, he wasn't even attempting to make, any kind of competitive trades. He just wanted to sell all these players.
Right, man.
For enormous
thank God.
lump sums of money.
Well, you know what? Good thing things have changed in Oakland, and now they have good ownership that would never do such a thing. Trade all their best players and tank as much as possible to potentially move the team. Thank God Never again. Once Charlie Finley was gone and moved away from the ownership of the Oakland A's, it has been just smooth sailing ever since then. No idea of them moving, no selling off players for the pennies on the dollar. Fantastic. So glad to see the stability has finally been brought to the Oakland Athletics. But yeah, no, he was pretty wild. There was a few like free agent signings where he was just like, nah, I don't want that team to get that guy. And it's like, hold on a minute. I don't know. How many of these can you change? Like, who's our commissioner at the time? You said his name a little bit earlier. Bowie, right? Bowie Kuhn, I think is
would that have been Bowie Kuhn? I think it would have been Bowie Kuhn. He was the commissioner from, let's see. Yeah, he took over in 69, from 69 to 84. So it was Bowie Kuhn. Yeah.
Yeah. He had a rough go of it for a lot of his run. Did not go great. Yeah, he had a lot of stuff. The 70s, not a great time to be a sports commissioner either, but yeah, he didn't make things any easier. But nobody came here.
Well, they had baseball. Well, look, another Vita Blue tie-in. Baseball had their cocaine scandal,
yes.
and Vita Blue was one of the guys that got suspended for a year.
One of the central guys from it. A lot of gambling controversies in the early 70s, free agency in the early 70s, and then obviously the cocaine and drug, situations in the mid to late 70s. So yeah, not a great run for
and one of the ugliest work stoppages ever in 81.
Yes. Oh, yeah, I forgot. I never saw that one. Yes.
And a work stoppage in 72. So he had 2 work stoppages, the cocaine scandal, gambling controversies. So, yeah, he had a rough
His owners literally just selling off play. If they weren't colluding, they were literally just selling players for pennies on the dollar. Yeah, not great. Not great, but
yeah. That trade to the Giants. I mean, the Giants got 7 players back from Vita Blue, and not a single one of them amounted to anything. Which ended up being a terrible trade, but they also got $300,000, the A's, in that deal. So, good for them.
Charlie O got to cut a check. Yeah, that's good for him. Yeah,
7 useless players and $300,000. So, I'm looking at this list. I've never even I've only heard of one of these players.
I just looked at it too, and I don't know who any of those guys are. So I'm just gonna.
The only guy I'm familiar with is John Henry Johnson, because he had a career of decent length and pitched into the late 80s. But the rest of these guys I'm not familiar with. But anyway, there's a little Vita Blue.
Yeah, exactly what you came here. Exactly what you came here for. Some Vita Blue discussion. Vita Blue trivia, and then a lengthy discussion about 1970s MLB labor stoppages. As I know so many people were excited to hear about is
Charlie Finley repeatedly offered Vita Blue enormous sums of money to change his first name to True.
True Blue?
I don't know. Ask Charlie Finley.
Ask Charlie Finley. All right, there you go.
So he's a weird guy.
Yeah, I don't know. He must have he probably owned some company that had that as their slogan or something like that. He was a mover and a shaker. They don't make him like Charlie Finley anymore. I'll tell you that. That's an old school, just scuzzy business guy that you just don't get those. Well, I guess you kind of get those guys.
Vita Blue is a cool name to begin with.
Vita Blue is a definitively cool name. Yeah, changing Vita Blue to anything else is a travesty. That Oakland A's team had a lot of fun names and characters, man. That's why there hasn't been like a documentary about those guys yet.
Those A's team. Vita Blue, Catfish Hunter, Raleigh Fingers, Reggie Jackson, Sal Bando, Gene Tennis. I mean, they had just a bunch of characters on that team, and then they had Herb Washington, the designated pinch runner.
Pinch runner, who is incredible.
Well, people don't know, the guy was a world-class sprinter. So Charlie Finley's idea was, well, this guy can just steal bases anytime he wants. So he doesn't need to learn how to play the field or hit. We'll just sign him and use him as a pinch runner. And that was the Herb Washington experiment, which lasted about 2 seasons and didn't work out because
did not work out
base
great.
Stealing.
Yeah,
it's more than just straight speed. I mean, you have to read the pitcher. There's base running instincts and all those things. But those teams were and they were good. They were
real good.
Perennial World Series contenders and 3-time. I think they won 3 World Series, right?
3. Yeah, they won 3
during that time, the early 70s. Yeah, and then then the Reds took over in the mid 70s, and then there was it was an era of, and then the Yankees with the in the late 70s with their rivalry with the Dodgers. So yeah, the 70s were a fun time for baseball, but a lot of controversies and whatnot. But,
Blue Moon Odom too, also on the Oakland Athletics with a great name.
Yeah,
so just great. Yeah, cool as fuck team. Mustaches, cool uniforms. All of them on coke, probably. That's fine. It was good. Yeah, a hell of a time to be a baseball fan. They're in the Bay Area. I'm sure they were all on substances aplenty, but yeah, for sure. Good, fun team. But it needs to be a documentary about that team because some of those guys are going to start dying, as we've seen with Vita Blue. So yeah, it's probably time if I don't know how much interest there is in a 1970s Oakland Athletics documentary, but
that'd be super interesting.
I'd love it. Yeah, I'd love it. But yeah, I don't know.
Just the owner alone was a psychopath. So. And they were winners, and they had a bunch of characters.
Yeah, instead of winning time, let's just do the 70s Oakland Athletics. Yeah, it's and Magic Johnson, the sexiness of Magic Johnson or whatever. But come on, there's a lot of stories to be told about those 70s days. But anyway, yes, we are going to get to professional wrestling. A lot to get to today. This is I don't know what year this is. This show looks like a 2014 flagship here. Am I seeing this right? We're going to talk Dragongate, Shotaro Ashino's disappointment, heartbreak / Champion Carnival / we're getting we're doing strong BJ too. We're talking Big Japan. Am I reading this right? What I'm seeing on this run sheet here: Big Japan, Shotaro Ashino, and Dragongate.
That's all correct. All big shows.
Wow.
That's right.
This is incredible. I love it. It's a throwback here. I didn't even prepare the music. I don't even think these are bounces. These are full on segments. People are like, oh, good, bouncing around Japan. I'm like, I don't think so. These are
no. We're not.
These
bouncing.
Are full ass segments, man. We're not bouncing. This is old school, man. This is 2014 stuff. We'll also review WWE's Backlash. That was a show that occurred from Puerto Rico this weekend. So we'll talk about that. A little bit about the All In Wembley weekend starting to come together with a few shows being announced and a few things being rumbled about. And then, of course, the AEW rumored TV deal, which we touched on a little bit last night on Instant Reaction Live. If you did not listen, we did an Instant Reaction Live for last night's episode of Dynamite, a very newsworthy episode of Dynamite, a very, Dynamite is back type of, as you said at the top, now that is an episode of AEW Dynamite. And yeah, hell of a show. We went about 2 hours last night live with Instant Reaction Live. You can listen to that at flagshippatreon.com in the $10 tier. And we discussed a lot of what we had heard about the rumored AEW TV deal. Nothing reported, nothing official, nothing that we were like, yeah, here's what it is. But all we were saying is what we knew, or what we know what is being rumored, if that makes sense. We know what is being kind of bandied about by various people and discussed by various people, whether that's the actual numbers, whether that's what's actually been signed. Nobody knows that right now. Nobody has any idea. But we dug into that a little bit and dug into a little bit more of what that means for AEW, what it means for the world of wrestling. And I don't know if you had any other thoughts about that, but obviously we did almost an hour of it yesterday for the Instant Reaction Live. But anything else that you wanted to kind of discuss with the AEW TV deal, and obviously the announcement that everybody knows, this part of the announcement that Collision is happening Saturdays 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, AEW getting a brand new show every single Saturday. We know everybody seems to know that. That's not even really a secret at this point. It seems fairly obvious. But as far as the TV deal or anything else with the AEW business, anything you wanted to add that we did not get to last night?
Well, what's new information since we did our show last night, which everybody who's on the $10 tier should go listen to that. And if you're not on the $10 tier, you should get on it or upgrade from the 5, because we also talked about, we had some information, the feel from inside the locker room that I gathered from people that I talked to regarding the new show on Saturday and CM Punk coming back from the company. And we're not going to talk about any of that stuff here today, but because we did that last night on the Instant Reaction Live. So there's some insight from the locker room regarding those topics. And then I think we did about an hour on the potential new television deal and all that. And a very in-depth conversation that went in many different directions that I think everybody would really like. So that's in the $10 tier right now, plus the Dynamite review of what was, probably one of the top 10 Dynamites of all time. What's new since we last talked about this was Dave Meltzer did in fact get it confirmed that they do in fact have a new television deal. Because through all the hysteria over the last 48 hours, it was never really confirmed by anyone that there was in fact a new deal until Dave confirmed that on his audio that he did in the wee hours this morning. So we know there's a new deal. We know the upfronts are on Wednesday. We know that Tony Khan has a bunch of announcements to make on Wednesday, and they're probably going to announce the new show. They might announce the return of CM Punk. It does seem like bringing back Miro and Thunder Rosa and Tony talking about all of these wrestlers who are jockeying for TV time, and seems to be a setup for the announcement that CM Punk is coming back, right? So that could be part of this series of announcements on Wednesdays. They may even, the way Tony does things, he may announce that they have a new TV deal. I doubt they're going to get into the nitty gritty of the numbers and all of that on television, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if he came on TV and announced that, they're locked in for 4 or 5, 6 years, whatever the deal is, and makes that part of the announcement as well. So next Wednesday is going to be real exciting. And then the show that we do next Thursday, obviously we're going to have a ton to talk about because all this stuff's going to be official and concrete and all of that. But we do know now for sure that there is a new deal. And as we talked about last night, I mean, there's been rumors and rumblings of what the deal is, and I kind of broke the seal on what those rumors were that were being discussed, on whatever you want to call it, dark Twitter or among reporters who just, were
eyeball
afraid to discuss it or whatever.
Let's call it eyeball
emojis
emoji
and everything
Twitter,
else.
yeah, where people just go,
Yeah,
interesting news. It's like, all right, what are we doing here?
Which caused confusion for about an hour or so because people thought that I was reporting hard news when, in reality, it was just me exposing what sort of these underground rumors were, because I don't know anything. They're not talking. I mean, Dave Meltzer has been stonewalled. Sean Ross Sapp says he's been stonewalled. Brandon Thurston put out a news report today. He says he reached out to AEW and Warner Brothers Discovery and he was stonewalled. The other night, I tried to poke around and get some answers, stonewalled. So neither side is talking. If anyone says they know what the deal is and they don't work, and they're not like one of 2 or 3 people
right, a higher up
for
in
AEW,
yeah, or a higher up in Warner Brothers,
or
yeah.
someone with Warner Brothers. They're lying. No one else knows the details of this deal, and they're not going to reveal it. That's all going to be revealed in 6 days. But the rumored number that was going around and was 5 years and between 1.1 and 1.2 million dollars. And again, that was just a rumor that was going around. And now, last night I wasn't sure, but now, Ryan Frederick has gone public. I mean, he posted it on the Figure 4 board, so it's not even a secret where the rumor emanated from now at this point. He's now claiming that was a prediction, based on some information that he had gathered. And Andrew Zarian came out and put his hands up and said, hey, look, I don't know the details. I just know that there's a deal that's been discussed. So basically, I don't mean to pat myself on the back, but I basically saved everybody 3 more days of eyeball emojis and Scrooge McDuck diving into coin fucking gifts, okay? By just breaking it, because I got fed up and I'm like, well, you know what? We got tipped off to what the rumor is. I'm just going to say it, just say it, and I did. And now, and then everybody else who was passing this thing around, finally came out and acknowledged, what the rumor was. That was, but who knows? Look, we do know this. Let's say it's 1.2 billion over 5 years. That would work out to about $240 million a year. Doing the math off the top of my head. I'm not going to ask Rich to do the math off the top of his head.
Please do not. I was told there'd be no math, so don't do that.
So, the current Raw deal is $265 million a year. The current SmackDown deal is $205 million a year. Because remember, that's a 2-hour show versus a 3-hour show. Okay. The current AEW deal for Dynamite and Rampage is about $45 million a year. So this deal, if the rumored numbers are to be believed, okay, would put them in the neighborhood of about what the WWE is getting for their programming, which actually kind of makes sense. I mean, it's because WWE's next deal is going to far exceed their last deal, and it's going to crush whatever this AEW deal is, okay? But AEW is adding 2 more hours of programming. So this is 5 total hours of programming that Warner Brothers Discovery would be paying for because Rampage isn't going anywhere. They're also going to have to pay a premium for the exclusivity, and we've already seen the YouTube shows have been yanked off the air, right? You're also talking an all-encompassing deal. There's talk that any AEW programming, footage, whatnot,
is going to belong to Warner Brothers Discovery. So there's a lot of rumors that the pay-per-views might be moving to one of, Warner Brother Discovery's properties, whether it's their streaming service or, whatever, this new Max, whatever. So if that is the case, and this is an all-encompassing deal, which gives them exclusive rights to all things AEW, I don't know if, $1 billion is all that outlandish of a deal. I really don't.
No, it's a lot of content. Yeah, I mean, you're talking about the 5 hours of television. You're talking about the potential for pay-per-views to be on Max or exclusively to BR Live or whatever. Which that'd be it. But I mean, hell, if they're paying the money, you do whatever they you get that lump sum from them or whatever. But yeah, there's a lot of. I mean, they are giving up a lot as well in this. If that is truly the case, that with the rumors and the all-encompassing rumors and all that sort of stuff, like, yeah, they're giving up a lot of pay-per-view revenue as well to then just kind of take one lump sum to go onto whatever Turner property it may be, if that is indeed part of the deal. But like you said, just in general, they're adding another 2 hours of television. They're adding, and we touched on a little bit on the Instant Reaction Live last night, that now there's also a different sell job that you have to do to the roster and the talent in AEW, because when AEW started, it was, we're the light schedule. You know what I mean? We're the, hey, come on in on Wednesdays and then go do whatever the hell you want the rest of the weeks. And hey, every quarter we have a pay-per-view, but it's not every single. So you know what? You could work a Wednesday and go hang out with your family for every other day of the week. Go wherever. All we need you to hear is here on Wednesdays, and then occasionally you need to be here on a Sunday or a Saturday or whatever. And yeah, then there's obviously caveats of, okay, yeah, we need you here for dark or whatever. Okay. Then you added Rampage, and it's like, all right, well, now we need some of you here sometime. Well, no, we'll just, we'll tape them after a Dynamite. So we just need you here for, stick around or whatever, a little bit long. Okay, all right. And now we have the inclusion of, house shows with the house rules. Like, well, actually, yeah, if some of you can hang around on some certain Saturdays, that, that'd be good. And now we're having full on, okay, now I need you guys to actually be here on Saturdays as well. So it's like, now we're this cushy schedule that once was, a great selling point for AEW to say, hey, look, you can go over there and do house shows, and you have to be at every single TV on every single Monday or every single Friday, and you got to work house shows during the week, and you got to be there for monthly pay-per-views or whatever. That's all kind of turned on its head now with AEW, and they don't necessarily have that same sort of bargaining chip to tell the to prospective talents or people when they're in negotiations with TV deals that, hey, you know what, hey, this is a little less money, but think about all the off time you have. Think about the ability that you have to be, to do indies if you want, to go, go here, go there. We don't need you. We only need you once a week and once a quarter for sure for a pay-per-view. That's not the case anymore with this other show. And that is going to be a bit of a change as well. So yeah, if you're going to have that happen too, you're going to need to pay up a little bit. Tony Khan isn't just going to say, yeah, sure, that's great. Well, my guys will work an additional day every single week. They don't care. Like, I mean, you got to up the ante, and it's going to cost him a little bit more in terms of contract negotiations and whatnot moving forward too. Because yeah, this once great advantage that AEW had to talent of being a light schedule is pretty much gone at this point.
They still have a slight edge there.
A slight edge.
They're probably only going to run a half a dozen house shows this year in total. Maybe 10 tops. You do have the 2 days of TV, though, which is exactly the same as WWE, but the house show schedule is a little lighter. They run 5 pay-per-views versus, 12 or 13 pay-per-views. So they have a slight edge in terms of schedule. And that's mostly coming from the amount of house shows that WWE is running versus the amount that AEW is running. So it certainly isn't the early selling point of, hey, look, you're going to work Wednesdays and you're going to work 4 pay-per-views a year. Like that's out the window, with all of this. But, just to show people, Brandon Thurston did some math just based on the dollar per viewer hour that the current deals are paying out to these companies, and then estimating for the additional 2 hours of content a week that Warner Brothers Discovery would be getting for this deal. And, he had to estimate the viewership, and he put it at a 0.15 for the Saturday show, which I think is a conservative estimate. I don't think it'll be drastically higher, though, because that's going to be a tricky time slot. But just for the point of the exercise, that's what he put it at. And he comes up with, for a 5-year deal, strictly for the television, for the 5 hours of television a week, $875 million, which would come out to about $175 million a year. But again, That's strictly for the TV hours. If they're going to hand over the pay-per-view rights to Max, that would have to be factored in. If you'd have to maybe factor in the content library in some form, so there's other considerations too that would increase the overall value of the deal. All the things we talked about earlier. So as I said, even if they don't get the billion, they're probably going to get something close. I mean, that's going to be in the neighborhood of what they're going to get, strictly based on, the dollar figure per viewer hour that these deals are already bringing in. So again, that's why I don't think it's necessarily outlandish to think that if it is a 5-year deal, that they can get something in the $1 billion range, give or take 100 million here or there, which sounds pretty flippant to just say, give or take 100 mil.
Give or take 100 mil, but we're talking big business here, man,
Either way, this is a game changer of a deal.
Yeah.
This instantly makes them solvent. If there was any doubt to that, because no one really knows whether they're making money, losing money, how much money they're making, how much money they're losing. We could only guess. There's too many unknowns. We don't know the value of some of their international television deals. We don't know the value of their sponsorships. We don't know what their payroll is. They're not a publicly traded company. We can estimate things, but there's so many unknowns. There's so many variables. But, we talked about last night, that look in Tony's eye, when he made that announcement. He knows he's got a fucking truckload of money coming, and this is a game changer for his company. In the same way that first huge media rights deal for WWE was a huge game changer for them. I mean, it changes everything. It affords you so many more luxuries in terms of there's just less pressure on the booking. Just start there when the money becomes guaranteed at those levels, it takes a lot of stress off of you from that standpoint. It affords you a lot of luxuries you didn't have when you're only getting $44 million a year from your media rights deal. When you're talking about triple or quadrupling what you were getting. So, this is a really big deal. And, we're going to find out Wednesday where all of this lands, because I figured by then, someone's going to have the scoop on what the deal is. Whether they flat out announce, I guess they have to announce it, right? Warner Brothers Discovery has to announce that.
I think they would have to. I don't, the dollar figures aspect of it, they might not, but I don't see any reason why they wouldn't, because it's not like, when ESPN signs up the NBA, they don't just say, we've signed the NBA for 7 years. All right, that's it. It's like, Like, people know the dollar figure right away. It's obviously a little bit different with some different, companies and leagues being involved, but I don't see any reason why they wouldn't announce it. I mean, I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't get that dollar figure, or at least somebody get that dollar figure by the time this show rolls around next week. We will hopefully, I would assume, Rich, we'll know that dollar figure.
Well, they're a publicly traded company.
Right. That's what I mean. Like, they would have to disclose, but I don't know if, like, in this, you might know better. Like, in upfronts, do you have to disclose that stuff, or can you just kind of say, hey, this is what we're doing?
Until a quarterly report, or
you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if they have to say the number, but they're going to. Like, they're going to. There's no reason for them not to, or at the very least, someone's going to get the scoop and someone's going to know that number too. So it's going to happen. Well,
the number's going to come out.
By this time next week, we'll know. We're going to know Collision. We're going to know what the TV deal is, and God only knows what other stuff we're going to know about AEW and the roster and whatnot.
Put it to you this way. Unless Warner Brothers Discovery is telling Tony Khan not to disclose it, he's going to want to tell people the number. So you're going to find the number out, because why wouldn't he want that out there if it's as huge as everybody seems to think it's going to be? But look, the other thing here is, the goalposts are going to have to be moved again, because now AEW is now an unmitigated, without a shadow of a doubt, inarguable, massive success. 4 years into their business to secure a deal of this magnitude. It took WWE, how long did it take Vince McMahon? 35 years to secure a deal of this magnitude, or something like that. 4 years in, and this is a company that a lot of people thought wouldn't last 6 months. Almost didn't, because of the pandemic. And if they hadn't gotten that first rewritten TV deal before the pandemic, they'd probably be dead. But a lot of people thought they'd last 6 months. than it was, wherever the goalposts were moved, they're going to have to be moved again. And I don't know, like, where do you shift the goalposts now? Where do the Eric Bischoffs and the Vince Russos and the Jim Cornettes, where do they move the goalposts, Rich? I don't know where you move them at this point. They're about to put at least 65, 70,000 people into one of the biggest stadiums in the world. They've just secured a game-changing television deal, which at worst is going to be the second biggest media rights deal in the history of professional wrestling. They're the most successful pay-per-view operation that pro wrestling has seen since the early 2000s. Where do you turn to move the goalpost now? Can it even be done? We know they're going to try.
They'll try. They will, and they're probably cooking them up right now. But you're kind of running out of all of them. You're really running out of them. Walter in the No Dope chat room brings up another good one. The early Eric Bischoff one was, it's a marathon and not a sprint. You got to, think of the long term of your company. And it's like, okay, well, now they've signed another long term deal. They've been around for 4+ years at this point. Like, okay, that's gone. You can't use that one anymore. So yeah, they're going to be scratching and clawing to figure it out. They'll probably just harp on like Tony's behavior on Twitter or something. I guess something like that. Or like you said, I think all they're going to have to do is wait until WWE signs their TV deal and it's 4 times or 5 times or whatever what AEW is getting, and then they'll be, they can't compete in the marketplace for talent. How are they going to compete in the marketplace for talent when WWE can offer so much more money or whatever? But as
in totality. It could be 4 times. Yeah, you're right. In totality, it'll probably be about 3 or 4 times the size, right? Because WWE is going to get a massive raise, and the Raw deal alone will match or exceed, or already matches or exceeds what AEW is going to get. So the new Raw deal is going to be more than that. The new SmackDown deal, they could potentially double both of those deals. And then in a year, the Peacock thing comes up. So you're right. Yeah, I 4 or 5 times sounded outlandish to me in my brain, but I think that's going to be pretty close to accurate.
Right, especially with the new leadership and whatnot, and potential for coupling it with UFC and coupling it with that what that company can offer as well. I mean, we're talking. It's a different company at this point. Like the idea that they're not going to be paying 3 or 4 times simply, but there's going to be other aspects to it. It's totally different. But like we talked about yesterday on the Instant Reaction Live, like we don't know how WWE is going to operate. So that idea that like, they're going to get so much more money, so they can definitely operate, and get the free agents and do all this. We don't know that yet. We don't know. They're rumored to be in a hiring freeze right now, and we don't know what's going to happen with the WWE business. Again, we did a lengthy discussion about it yesterday on Instant Reaction Live, so I don't want to do it again. But yeah, the idea that we're just kind of under the assumption that WWE business is going to operate exactly how it's operated for the last 50 years under Vince McMahon, like we don't know if that's the case. Like we really don't know.
Let's say AEW gets the 175 that Brandon Thurston is estimating without factoring in pay-per-view and video library and all of those things. Let's say they just get the 175. That's a 4-time increase from 45 million. So just so people understand, if Raw gets a 4-time increase, that's $1 billion per year. Do I think they're going to get that? Probably not. But that's just to show you the scale of what the next WWE deal is going to look like, because they're going to get a massive raise. So even Brandon Thurston's estimate, which is a little lower than the rumored estimate that's going around, is a 4-time increase for AEW to give them the 875. And for people who are wondering, well, why would you give up the pay-per-view revenue and fold that into the deal? No, why wouldn't you? Because if you take 5 pay-per-views, the old back of the envelope math, Rich, if you take 5 pay-per-views that do 130,000 buys each, okay, is that fair? That's about what they do. That's $650,000. Let's call it $700,000. Let's just estimate high. Okay, so that's 700,000 pay-per-view buys. Times the $50. That's $35 million. Let's call it a 50-50 split, which we know it isn't, but we're being generous. That's so you divide that by 2, and that's about 17.5 million. So let's again estimate high and say that AEW is netting $20 million in pay-per-view. And it's probably less than that, but let's build for some growth or whatever. Why wouldn't you just fold that into the deal with Warner Brothers Discovery? Because when you're talking about a deal which total value could exceed $1 billion, 20 million is a drop in the bucket at that point. You just give them what they want to get the total value of the deal as high as you can.
It's also a lot easier. It's a lot easier for you to do because you're not grinding for every single pay-per-view to buy. You're not grinding to make sure that every possible person that you know that could possibly be watching your show is going to give you $60 to buy that pay-per-view. You're good. You know what I mean? Like it's
as we talked about, so much of the booking pressure is off.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you don't try. It doesn't mean you completely pack it in like Vince McMahon has done at times, where the effort is just so minimal and the pay-per-views have been abysmal. But it does take a lot of the pressure off, where
you're not scratching and clawing for every $1,000, every 1,000. Oh, if we can get 1,000 more people to buy this show, then we're really talking.
Right.
Like you're not worrying about those 1,000 people. You're worrying, hey, you know what? We got the money, but we still want a good show. We obviously want people to still go to our shows, consume our media, and do all that sort of stuff. But yeah, you do take a lot of the booking stress out of it, and you're not hunting and chasing every last pay-per-view buy that you could possibly get, like they are in the current model.
You can take more chances, and you can take more chances in creating stars. You can take chances on someone in a big spot on a pay-per-view when, like you said, you're not living or dying between doing 120,000 buys or doing 160,000 buys. When the show's already bought and paid for and folded into a larger deal, then you can take a chance on rocket packing someone into a main event, and because it's not, the money's fixed. And this is what we've been talking about with WWE for a decade now. It's huge fixed money, and it makes everything easier. So that's the kind of analysis that we'll have to be putting into this company now at times, and that's the game that they're playing. Huge fixed income, which makes everything easier. Which is why Tony Khan had that eye of the fucking tiger last night when he made this announcement. He's all fired up, as well he should be. This announcement's huge. He's got fucking Wembley in front of him. That's going to do a $10 million gate somewhere thereabouts. Forbidden Door, Grand Slam, all out. I mean, this
hell of a summer.
All of a sudden, things have just, turned around from, and the one thing that, you think would stop now would be, and I'm not talking about the concern trolls or the anti-AEW crowd, the people that want it to die, the psychopaths. I'm talking about fans who like AEW and people who listen to shows like this and know what's going on. Because, Rich, there was a pretty high-profile wrestling podcast that has existed longer than ours, and I'm not going to name it because I'm not playing that Howard Stern 1990s podcast war game. I'm not doing that. I have no interest in that. 2015, let's fucking go. But 2023, Joe Lanza's not into that anymore.
Thank you.
Okay,
I appreciate it. I appreciate that. It is a 2014. It's a 2014 throwback show. So you know what? Fuck them. Name them. No, I'm kidding. Please don't.
Rich, I've grown up a bit over the years. I've matured. I'm a family man now. I'm not banging girls with leg casts every other night. But there was a pretty prominent wrestling podcast, and I don't know if it's very popular in our circle, so to speak. It's kind of more of the, the Venn diagram probably crosses with Cornette a bit for this particular show, but they've existed for well over a decade. And they have a fairly successful Patreon, not as successful as ours, but a fairly successful Patreon. And, they've been out there, and you would know who they were if I told you who they were, if you don't know already. And they actually went on the air last week and said the Wembley number wasn't impressive. And it's like, that's the kind of analysis that's out there. So my point is, for people who listen to our show or subscribe to WrestleNomics or the Wrestling Observer, people who kind of have a grasp on the business side of wrestling and know that saying the Wembley ticket sales aren't impressive is just a preposterous claim, or the kind of show that would even entertain the idea that Tony Khan is buying the tickets or any of this other nonsense that's really out there. People really discuss these things.
It's truly out there. I know.
It's insanity.
It is. By people that are like, I assume, fully functional, like adults, humans. Yeah, that are like, I bought 20,000 tickets. It's easy to sell 60,000. What? How do they distribute these? Like, I gotta know, like, okay, so Tony Khan buys 20,000 tickets to Wembley Stadium. how is he distributing these? Who's getting these? Like, because it's always that used to be like that, and that wasn't like that's not a new thing. People have been saying that for a very long time for some fucking reason, and yet every time there's a pay-per-view, like the crowd's always full and the building's always full, and you'd think it would stop.
Yeah.
You think it would stop, and then it doesn't. Yeah. And I just would love to ask those people, okay, well, explain how this whole process works here.
And also the idea that scalpers are buying them all when we have data. A typical big event, Meltzer does these numbers, is about 20% of the tickets go on the resale market. Currently, for the Wembley show, less than 2% of the tickets are available on the resale market.
And then the argument we have to have with those people all the time is like, they're like, oh, well, nobody wants these tickets. Only scalpers have them. And it's like, scalpers are in business because they buy tickets that people want. You know what I mean? Like, you're a scalper. Scalpers don't buy tickets to things that nobody wants to go to. They buy tickets to popular events. So if a bunch of scalpers buy your ticket, that's also good. That means they're probably going to make, they're trying to make money on that, and they're probably going to try to sell every single ticket they have, and that's why they're in the business that they're in. So yeah, wild.
Yeah, but yeah, there's really dumb podcasts out there, for lack of a better term, and some of them are hosted by people like Eric Bischoff and Jim Cornette. And although Jim Cornette, to be fair, has done nothing but praise the Wembley show.
He has not. He has not. I don't know what Bischoff's slant has been so far, and I don't honestly care. Don't care.
But my point here is, my long-winded point is, I'm even talking about the kind of fan who is tuned in, has half a brain, listens to our show, listens to Dave, subscribes to things like, the Post Wrestling Observer, Voices of Wrestling corner of the universe. You even see some of those fans panicking over one bad rating.
Right.
Or
biting their teeth about every single thing.
That doesn't draw well or anything. And hopefully now those days are over, where Dynamite can have an off week where they do a 0.21, and like you wrote about a couple weeks ago, the sky isn't falling. It's all right. To take a step back and look at the big picture. And the big picture for AEW right now couldn't be any. I mean, they're riding the biggest high they've ever rode, like right this second. This summer is going to be huge for them. It all starts this Wednesday. So I just hope and I know the genesis of it. I know where it comes from. People are afraid they're not going to last because they don't like WWE, and they're tired of that being the only American alternative, and they like AEW, and they're concerned.
Yeah, it comes from a place.
Concerned anymore.
It comes from a place. It comes from a good place, but it's also like this worry that we're going to go back to the dark ages, and there's only going to be one company or whatever. And I get that, but yeah, that stuff should have probably ended a couple years ago, and now hopefully after tomorrow it will just officially be over, and maybe these people can just sit back and enjoy AEW fully for what it is, and not have to worry or freak out or go nuts about it. Like you said, every a bad attendance. We get a WrestleTix update from some show coming up in 2 months, and it's like, oh god, they've only sold 50%. Oh god, and it's like, just calm down, just take a breath. Like, it's okay. They're going to be all right, and yeah, hopefully after next week we can just end that sort of not concern trolling, but like the biting our nails and the PTSD, the TNA WCW PTSD that we have.
The concern trolling is never going to end.
No, that's going to continue.
And hopefully our listeners are savvy enough to have long since been ignoring all of those sorts of people who, again, we're not naming any of them either. We all know who they are. We could run off a list of half a dozen. I don't understand why anyone pays any attention to any of them. They're all children. And if they're not children, they're very stupid adults. They're just, and their ringleaders are grifting and know damn well what they're doing. Okay, Eric Bischoff found his little niche. He's the ringleader of all these people. I don't know. Eric made some bad investments. He's got to do what he's got to do. That's his problem. But, at this point, though, again, to circle back, I don't know where the goalpost moves now. I genuinely don't know where. And I guess that where it moves is, well, yeah, you're still number 2. You're still not doing as well as WWE. That's the only place they can go. And
or Dave's always mentioned, historically being number 2 is not. Dave Meltzer's always said, historically being number 2 is not a good position to be in. And he's been sort of weird about that prior to the TV deal or whatever, and maybe his idea on that will change once they sign that TV deal. But I think we also have to get out of the sense that there must be a winner and a loser, and that we're in a war that can only be won by one entity. Because again, we have this WCW PTSD that it was like, yeah, WCW was nearly put WWF out of business, and then WWF came back and they put WCW out of business, and then they're gone. Like we're not that anymore. We're not doing that anymore. That it can exist. AEW and WWE can both exist in the same universe and not necessarily have to be in the business of trying to take the other one out of business. Where for WWF and WCW, that wasn't the case. For a long time, WCW was in the business of, we're going to grow ourselves, but what would be really good if we put them out of business all along the way as well. And then WWF turned around the tables and said, yeah, let's put those fuckers out of business. And then they did, and they won it. But it's really not what we're doing anymore. And there can exist a number two. It doesn't have to be one, and then everybody else is going to eventually lose to the number one. It could be a one and it could be a two, and that's okay. And that's a healthy wrestling business.
It's because a lot of these people approach it from strictly a television rating standpoint because of the Monday Night War. And the Monday Night War and the way the Monday Night War was judged, which was television ratings, okay? These people are they're stuck 25 years in the past. And again, it's because of their ringleaders like Eric Bischoff and Vince Russo, who haven't had success.
Well, and they've been stuck. They're stuck 25 years in the past.
Right. And of course, those guys are going to view it through that lens, because Eric Bischoff's entire career and reputation hinges on those 82 weeks?
83 weeks, Joe.
I care so little about it, I never even know the exact number. But it's like, that's his entire career hinges on is grasping those 83 weeks. And same for Russo. I mean, his any success he ever had in the wrestling business was almost 3 decades ago. So they view everything through that lens. They pass that message along. And now, all of their sycophants and all their fans and their listeners and all that, even though Russo really doesn't have much of an audience, Bischoff does. They all view it through that lens. So when they see AEW have 750,000 viewers last week, their brain automatically makes them think that they're failing. And this means that they're going to be out of business. And it's nonsense. It's utter nonsense. And we discussed this last night, but I'll bring it up again. This show right here, you and I, even among rational people, we were among the very few who never worried about this. I was never concerned about AEW securing a big television deal and a new television deal. And I always thought that if it wasn't Warner Brothers Discovery, it'd be someone else, because you can't perform as well as we
floated that television. Fox thing. Remember about a year ago, we floated that if I was Tony Khan and Mookie Khan or whatever, I'd get a meeting with Fox and go, hey, look, we know that you're happy with WWE, but just so you know, like, here's our numbers. We're not.
Well, the opposite.
Yeah.
My idea
Fox,
was if I was Fox,
the same too.
I would say, I can get AEW on pennies on the dollar and make more money off of it, because it'll perform 60 or 70% as well. Right. And then, we were the first ones to bring that up a year. And then that actually started to get some rumblings, a few months later, where other people were picking up on that idea. So I never worried about that, because you weren't going to have a television product as strong as Dynamite. And make no mistake, it's a strong television product. It's a top 5 performer every weekend and it only gets beat by NBA games and the occasional reality show that gets hot, like this Vanderpump gimmick. That was not going to find a home, even if Warner Brothers didn't want it. I was never concerned about this. But hopefully, among the rational fans, people like our listeners, they won't have this panic anymore that this company's going anywhere, because it's not. It's not. This Wednesday changes everything. Forever.
I'm fascinated to see the new grift. I can't wait. It's kind of just have to be like, Tony's behavior on Twitter is not that of a CEO or whatever.
Yeah, it just becomes more comical each time where they push these goalposts.
Yeah.
And, to bring up that Tony's not professional. Okay, you know what? Tony's a poster. And we all know Tony's a poster. Okay? Are these people familiar how Vince McMahon treated Armin Katayan, or how Vince McMahon treated Bob Costas, or how Vince McMahon treated Phil Mushnick, or how I could go on, Rich? I could do this for an hour.
You could do this all day. Yes, we could go
on
on
for a while. Are these people familiar with history? Do they know? And you didn't have to be alive. Pick up a book. Log into YouTube. You want to talk about unprofessional? I mean, okay, Tony claps back with some tweets. Has he ever treated a reporter the way Vince McMahon has treated, at minimum, a half a dozen reporters over the years? I mean, the reason that Nick Khan and Triple H and Stephanie McMahon over the years have become the public faces of the company is because Vince knows he can't handle talking
because
to the
he's
press.
An unhinged maniac who can't handle.
He's aware of it,
and he's aware of it. Yeah.
So I don't want to hear this shit about how unprofessional Tony Khan is because he throws out a clapback tweet now and then, because it came up in the internet era, because he's a millennial who came up with memes. That, get used to it.
Well, I'll say this to
look at Dana White. How is Dana White running?
Right.
I mean, this is how these people.
Also,
they're all like
Vince McMahon incredibly wealthy and worth more than ever. Dana White incredibly wealthy, worth more than ever. Tony Khan, eventually by next week, probably going to be even more wealthy and even worth even more. It's like,
in Tony Khan's case, a little more wealthy, not more wealthy than, what I mean? Like, that guy was already starting, you say starting on third base, that motherfucker started hitting a grand slam. I mean, that guy was worth billions and billions of dollars to begin with, but your point is taken.
Yeah, it's just that, that it's like, oh, you got to be more professional. It's like, I don't know. It doesn't seem to be like affecting any of these people. All these people seem to be doing just okay. So maybe not. And I will say, since we just passed up the anniversary, I also don't believe Tony Khan has gone onto his television show and challenged the opposing owner of the other company to a fight on pay-per-view and then got sued over it. Like one of the other people that, says that Tony Khan's too unprofessional has actually did many, many years ago. So anyway.
Yeah, I mean, Eric Bischoff has a long history of saying stupid shit too. I mean, that's just, there's something about that job and that position that maybe it's because you're in the fight game. Boxing promoters, there's a litany of boxing promoters who have been shit talkers. It's like, so whatever it is about, the fight game. I mean, these guys, I don't know if it's the fucking overload of testosterone that just is flowing throughout everybody you deal with on a day-to-day basis. I don't know if it's the overload of testosterone that you're intentionally pumping into your body in the case of at least two of the people that we've been talking about today. I don't know what it is, but it's there's something about it where they all behave this way. Tony, out of all of them, is probably the most pleasant with the media. Tony Khan couldn't be more polite in his media calls and at his scrums. It's on Twitter. He's a poster. He's a poster. It really ain't that big a deal. And it's never a target that doesn't deserve it. Okay? You got a ESPN reporter tweeting with reach, like a real person with reach, who had a blue check mark under the old system. I don't know if he has a blue check mark under the Elon system, but this is a real reporter putting out false information about the Wembley show. I mean, was it professional? Was it quote unquote professional what Tony Khan did? No. Did the guy have it coming though? Yeah, probably. I mean, he's putting out false facts, doing the bidding of Nick Khan, whose old company represents the guy. So, I mean, and this is tame by like Vince McMahon standards. Tame. Wake me up when Tony Khan's taking out full page newspaper. Well, there are no more newspapers. You get the idea.
If he did, he would be insane. Yes, if he was so angry about something, he was taking out full page newspaper ads. Then indeed, he would be.
Yeah. So like someone in the chat just said,
right.
What if Vince had Twitter when he was 35?
Oh,
you don't think he'd be doing the same shit?
Oh, God. A coked up, roided up, 1985 Vince McMahon on Twitter. Good God. Yeah, that'd be...
What if Vince had Twitter during the Monday Night War?
What if he had it during the steroid trial? Imagine him during the steroid trial, and people being like, hey, Vince, clapping back on Twitter all the time. It'd be awful. It'd be terrible.
I mean,
everybody would be worse off with Twitter. Society is worse off with Twitter. Trust me. Add Twitter to any part of history and it would be worse, because I know that because I'm living in a horrible existence that is filled with Twitter. So yes, I'm aware. It would be worse for sure.
Vince never tweets. That's because he doesn't even know his password. Fuck it. What do you think? Give me a break.
I see that a lot. They're like, see, which again, like you can't be. It's 20. Like in 2023, you can't be making that argument, man. When the company, it should have been, a problem in that company that Vince McMahon was, doing what he was doing unchecked for years upon years, but it's just not. But yeah, the idea that it's like, that's how you run a business right there, pal. It's just whatever. Who knows?
The guy's 80. That's why he doesn't tweet, because he's 80.
Happy birthday, Shane.
Okay. If he sat down and learned how to use it, he probably would tweet. Maybe not with maybe now he would, but when he was 35, 40 years old.
Oh God. Yeah.
When he was Tony Khan's age, please. Will Tony Khan be tweeting when he's 80?
God, hopefully Twitter's not around when he's 80. But if it is still around in some form. Oh, great. Right? Great. Love it.
So that will be, that's something
that's going to be a bad existence for you, Joe. Let me tell you, you better hope that doesn't come true.
Jeez, working stiff on me here. Jeez,
you got a lot of people that love you, so that's gonna be.
Listen, that's the albatross of being outspoken and right most of the time. Mm-hmm. When you have the combination of being outspoken and when you're almost always right, that's a recipe for disaster. People are gonna hate you. So that's my burden that I must carry. How about Dynamite last night? 877,000 viewers. Up 100,000 viewers from the week before, a 0.32, up from the 0.28 that they've been doing every single week, seemingly for a month. Up against the Vanderpump machine, Warriors Lakers, 7.5 million viewers, a 2.72 in the demo. NHL playoffs did a 0.4. Trump, all the Trump bullshit last night, and Dynamite up. And up big.
I was shocked. I was shocked because we didn't touch on it last night, but I was looking at the competition and it was like, oh boy, you got NBA, big time NBA games too. Not little time. I mean, but every game at this point for the NBA is a big time game.
Big now.
Yeah. Plus, then the CNN thing with Trump, where I was like, oh man, this is gonna. And that thing, I was blown away. That thing only got 3 million viewers, I think. Is that what the official number was? It wasn't good. Whatever that number was, it was like, whoa, okay. Because I really thought that was going to put a huge dent in it. And the NBA still did really, really well. The NBA, man, did you see the demo number for the Lakers Warriors, man? It was like 2.72. 2.72 in the demo for Lakers Warriors, man. God damn. Sports are back. Remember that weird period where like people weren't watching sports for a little while?
Yeah.
It was like there was the COVID year where obviously people were just like, this is too weird. I don't really want to watch this. But then there was like the post-COVID years that people were just like not watching sports. It was like, I guess sports, nobody watches sports. But then sports are back, baby. Everybody is watching sports again. And those were wild numbers. Yeah, for them to still be good, it was like, wow, that was a good TV night, man. People were watching TV last night in some form or fashion because a lot of stuff did really, really good.
Yeah, and they obviously stacked the show to go up against all of this, and I would assume the next few weeks will be stacked as well as the NBA continues to get deeper into the playoffs. But I didn't expect that kind of jump, and the main event quarter hour totally bucked the trend. Normally, quarter hour 8 loses viewers, and I don't think a lot of people who don't pay attention to ratings understand that. But even the main event, just because it's so late at night. And Raw for years, hour 3, does lower viewership than hour 1. That's always been the trend with these wrestling shows, and that's been the trend with Dynamite. But last night, that cage match, the viewership shot up for the main event and the final quarter hour, which is notable because that does not always happen. And oftentimes, the viewership drops for the final quarter hour. And quarter hour 7 is where the rise began, and that cage match took up the last few minutes of quarter hour 7. And if you count the intro, it's about half of quarter hour 7 and then all of quarter hour 8. And that's right where the viewership shot up. So there was huge interest in the Moxley Omega cage match, especially when you factor in all of the other competition, because at that point they were head to head with Lakers Warriors at that point, I believe. So they may not have been early in the show. What time did that basketball game start? I hate to put you on the spot.
The Lakers Warriors one was around 9 Central, I think, so about 10 Central or 10 Eastern, I should say, right around 10 Eastern.
9 Central. So yeah, the Laker Warrior game was starting right
just
around.
Yeah, I was
Dynamite
flipping
was
back
ending.
and forth for a bit, but then obviously we went to do the show. So I want to say right around the same time. It may have started just after the cage match ended. I don't recall exactly when it tipped off, but near.
Well,
that.
and obviously West Coast it went head to head directly, obviously. So, yeah, because the West Coast feed would have started an hour later, and that's right smack dab in the middle of the basketball game. So.
Brandon in the No Dope chat room says started about 10 minutes after Dynamite ended. So there you go.
Okay, so it didn't affect the East Coast, but it affected the West Coast directly, the Laker Warrior game. But so moot point with the main event then wouldn't have affected the main event. The main event did tremendous. I mean, that just obviously huge interest in that, and it ended up being a great match with a great angle. So that's going to help moving forward. And like I said last night, I came out of that Dynamite thinking I can't wait for next week. For the first time. Probably since the pay-per-view, I came out of a Dynamite thinking, I can't wait for next week. I can't be alone. That was a killer show, and a ton of people watched, and I would imagine that momentum would carry forward, but, who the fuck knows? Trying to predict this TV stuff sometimes is a fool's errand, Rich. You ever use the phrase, a fool's errand?
I've used it from time to time, not that often, but from time to time. As a fool, I have indeed used it a couple of times here and there. Well, speaking of people that are probably not fools, AEW Wembley weekend, All-In weekend, is coming up, obviously in August, and most people assume that a lot of the British promotions are probably going to get involved in running shows in and around the weekend, as they should. If you have 60 to 70 to potentially 80,000 people assembling at in one place to watch professional wrestling, you should probably find out how to get involved with that. And Rev Pro looks like they are the first to pounce with announcing they are running their 11th anniversary show on Saturday, August 26th from the Copper Box, and they're calling it their biggest show ever. So we kind of knew that was going to happen, but yeah, they're the first ones to drop here by announcing a show around All-In weekend. So good on Rev Pro, smart idea of Rev Pro, and yeah, announcing it as the biggest show ever, their 11th anniversary show.
Well, for people who don't know, the Copper Box is where New Japan ran Royal Quest in 2019, and that show did 6,119 fans.
It's a big place.
That was a huge show for New Japan. Look, I don't think Rev Pro is going to do 6,000 fans, but running the weekend of Wembley, they're going to do probably their biggest crowd of all time. I don't even think that's going to be in dispute, because they're going to load that show up too, and they're going to be able to put a lot of big stars on that show. So this is a real big deal for them, and that building's a big deal. And I know in some of my group chats and haunts that I frequent, a lot of the people from England were very excited about that announcement and saying that they were going to look into going to that show. So I think that's going to be a big one, and it's a great idea and good for Rev Pro. I'm happy for them. We've been a pro Rev Pro podcast for a while now. I think they handled speaking out and the pandemic perfectly, much better than any other company in the UK. They just kept their nose down, made the right decisions, did the right things, did the work, kept their business going, put on good shows. And, Quilden, I don't have enough good things to say about him.
They didn't listen to the noise too, because there was so much noise. Why are you guys running during the pandemic? Why make an announcement about this? Explain why about this wrestler. Explain why you worked with this wrestler in the past. And they just kind of said, you know what, we're just going to keep doing our thing.
Kept
whatever.
His nose down and worked. That's
right.
it. Okay, no dopey codes of conduct that don't mean anything.
Which Progress is still doing. They did one this week. Just stop. God.
Nobody cares about your code of conduct. It means nothing. It's nonsense. It's utter nonsense. No codes of conduct. No constant announcements on your Twitter. No grandstanding. No overcorrecting and then not being able to. No, they kept their nose down. They didn't listen to any of the noise. And now they're doing great. And now they're going to have the biggest show in their history. And I've watched, Rev Pro, really since the pandemic. I've been on top of it. And this year I've watched nearly every show, and they're doing a really good job this year. It's simple. point A to point B booking. There's always 2 or 3 really great matches on most of their bigger shows. Some of the smaller shows that don't have as much talent don't. They've got a great crop of young talent that's coming up. And forget guys like Callum Newman and JJ Gale and Luke Jacobs. That's like the old group of young guys they had coming up. Now they've got the Leon Slaters and they have a whole nother wave of good young workers coming up. And it's really it's the indie I'm personally most invested in. Okay. And their shows are the closest thing to the kind of indie wrestling, Rich, that you and I enjoy.
Right.
The old school ROH, the old school Evolve, where it's just no nonsense pro wrestling.
Right. They take themselves way too serious, and goddamn it, I'm here for it because wrestling needs to take itself serious again, and we haven't done that in a very long time. So I very much welcome a company that takes themselves too serious and doesn't deal in a bunch of bullshit and shenanigans and all that sort of stuff. And it's fantastic.
Matches with dumb jocks and too many kickouts, and sometimes there's times I'm watching Rev Pro and their matches, and I feel like I'm watching a 2006 ROH show. The talent level's not the same. That's not what I'm getting at. Okay. They have guys that are really good. Don't get me wrong, but up and down the card, it isn't the same talent level as vintage ROH or Evolve from like 2016, but it's the same style of wrestling and the same style of indie show. It's not commentators telling you to suck their dick and cursing at you and this grimy feel, this DIY punk rock atmosphere. If that stuff's for you, great. You could have all the game changers and circle sixes I'm not into that. I want pro wrestling, and that's what Rev Pro delivers. And I'm happy for them. I love the way they've handled everything that's come their way in a very tumultuous 3 or 4 year period. I love the way Quilden does business. I love that they build their own stars. And I'm thrilled for their success. And I hope that they pack as many people as they can into that Copper Box building. Is that the day before or 2 days before?
That is the day the Copper. They're going to the Copper Box on Saturday, August 27th, and All In is the next day 26th. Rev Pro is doing the 26th, and then All In is going to be on the 27th.
Yeah.
So the day before.
There's people in the chat saying, forget getting Lanza to the Tokyo Dome. We got to get him to London for a Rev Pro show. I'd love to. Bart Scott can't wait. I'd love to go to London for a Rev Pro show. I would love to do that. So, who knows?
Much easier flight. Much easier flight for you, too. That Tokyo flight might be tough. That London flight, not bad. Not bad.
Much easier flight, and I feel like if I get lost or something, at least it's the same language, right? Like it's less intimidating.
It's not as much of a problem. It's not as much of a problem in Japan. I've never been there, but from everything I've heard, that it's not as much of a problem as you might think it is. I've traveled outside of the country, and it's not as much of a problem as you might think it is. Yeah,
it would be for me. That's you. Okay.
Everybody speaks English, and everything is in English. I'm telling you, you'll be fine.
If I went to Japan by myself and attempted to travel on a train, I'd end up in South Korea. I'm telling you, it would not end well.
You'd be Kota Ibushi when he travels to America, and he's just like stranded. You're like, where is he? Oh, he's at this airport. Why is he at that airport? And it's like, somebody go get him. It's like he's in Kyoto for some reason. He's at the Kyoto airport for some reason. How did he get there? We don't know. He just got there. Or you're in Korea for some reason.
Yeah, I freely admit it. I wouldn't stand a chance. I can't even operate the train systems here where everything's in English. I don't know what I'm doing. I in Japan, forget it. I wouldn't know what the hell I'm doing. But yeah, so yeah, good for Rev Pro. That's great news, and I know they're gonna stack that show. And I'm sure Ospreay obviously is gonna be on that show, and he'll have a big match, and Ricky Knight Jr. and everybody. I mean, if people, Luke Jacobs, let me tell you something. Luke Jacobs and Connor Mills are, to me, two of the most improved wrestlers in the business this year.
Mills
and I'm watching everything.
Good now compared to where he was. Look-wise, wrestling-wise, in-ring-wise, confidence-wise, charisma-wise. Yeah, he is night and day. If you haven't seen him in a long time, you got. Well, hell, if you haven't seen Luke Jacobs in a long time, you should check him out too, because he's a completely different human too.
Luke Jacobs, and this might sound sacrilegious. He's like a mini Walter at this point. I mean, he's not, Walter's Walter, Gunther, whatever. He's he's an all-timer. Let's be honest. That's not unfair, right? He's an
no.
all-time
He's
great.
been doing this. Yeah, no, he's an all-timer for sure.
He's an all-time great wrestler. Okay, so I'm not telling you that Luke Jacobs is on, but he's like, but it feels condescending to call him a dollar store version of Walter. That's not the right verbiage either, but he's on that path. That's the kind of wrestler he is now. And Connor Mills, look, he went through a rough period. We used to call him the British Jordan Oliver.
We did,
right?
Yeah, because he looked like him. He had the cornrows.
Looked like him.
Yeah.
And a similar like vibe. And they were both like, these guys could be good, but they suck. And it's funny because both of them have rapidly improved. Like, I think Jordan Oliver is one of the most improved wrestlers in the world. So it's like, you've got to give these young wrestlers a chance sometimes. You do. You really do. Because now I'm going out of my way to watch matches from these guys now, whereas they were skips for me before. So anyway, that's, and I'm telling you, Rev Pro is loaded with good young talent.
Yeah,
they really are.
Yeah,
and they're bringing in that latent buzzard now. Ospreay did that open challenge, and they picked Leighton Buzzard, this guy from ICW, which is a promotion way off of our radar. I mean, we don't pay any attention. I don't think a lot of people in Europe do either anymore. But so he did the match with Leighton Buzzard. I don't know if you saw it, but I watched it. It was a great match. I mean, Will Ospreay could have a great match with me. I mean, that shouldn't be a surprise. But it seemed like it earned him a job now because Buzzard's put out some tweets and says he's coming into Rev Pro now. So obviously Ospreay was impressed with him and Quilden was impressed with him. And that's another guy that you can add to the pile, of just these good young talents that Rev has. So I'm happy for them. I think a lot of people I don't know how that show, I'm sure it'll be distributed in some form or fashion. It'd be great if they can get it on Fight. If not, their streamer is only like $7.99 a month or something. Hopefully this gets some attention and some eyes on Rev Pro that haven't been there before.
Yeah.
I personally believe they're the best indie in the world, at least for my tastes.
Well, and people are also going to get some eyes on Dan Maloney in the next couple of weeks as well, as he's in the Best of the Super Juniors. And already he's kind of catching a lot of people's attention because he looks like Dan Maloney. And if you know what Dan Maloney looks like, he looks like Dan Maloney. And yeah, you're already starting to see a few. I saw some viral tweets going yesterday about Dan Maloney kind of laughing about his look, but also being like, holy shit, look at that guy. Like, and he's good. He's a good worker too. So Best of the Super Juniors is going to be a good spotlight for him. And yeah, his home base obviously is still Rev Pro. So they got an embarrassment of riches right now in Rev Pro. It's a nice, they've rebuilt this thing pretty good and they've withstood some losses. They've withstood speaking out. They withstood the whole scene kind of exploding and they got a good partner in New Japan. They have, potentially, partnerships with AEW down the line as well. So yeah, it's definitely a company to keep an eye on and good for them to be able to have this 11th anniversary show going on during All In weekend. And yeah, they're going to have their biggest crowd ever. And it's definitely well deserved. All right, let's go to Puerto Rico now, Joe. Not no, we're not talking about. Well, we're going to talk about a Colon, not Carlos Colon, but let's talk about WWE Backlash, their pay-per-view from Puerto Rico. It was on Saturday last weekend, and it was a pretty fun show, I'd say. All in all, I mean, the crowd was awesome. I mean, definitely. No, you don't have to use fake noise and air blowers and hair dryers or whatever when you were in Puerto Rico because, man, these fans were ready and anxious and excited to see professional wrestling. And I think it just made for a much more a fun show. I don't think it was all in all a good show, and I have some some thoughts about that, but it was definitely a fun show, and the good moments were really, really good. And I don't know. I thought it was a decent, fun watch for me. Obviously, still some complaints, and we'll touch on those when we go match by match. But what do you think overall of Backlash?
I thought it was a good show. It was as good as a WWE show could be for someone like me, because there's just so much stuff that they do that I hate so much that I don't know if they could ever have a great show in my eyes. And that's just me being honest, because as we go through this show, I'm going to talk about some things that just bug the hell out of me, and that's just the house style.
Right.
But, it's as good. I don't think it was as good as that one night of WrestleMania.
Night one. No, night one of WrestleMania was like legitimately a great show.
Yeah, because the good matches on this show didn't peak as high as the matches at WrestleMania did. Okay, so on either night, honestly. But was this an enjoyable show? Yeah. This was a WWE show where I by the end of the night, I wasn't dying inside because I didn't want to watch anymore. But there was plenty of stuff on the show that I also did not like. And I guess, we'll get to all that as we go through. But at the end of the day, I had 3 different matches hit my notebook. I mean, are they going to challenge for match of the year? They won't. But on a WWE show that has 6 or 7 total matches, I mean, to me, that's a success. I didn't think I didn't think anything was terrible. At worst, a couple of the matches were like.
I have two terrible matches, but I'll get to them when we get to it.
I know what they are. I mean, it's the 3-way and really. Oh well, this is going to be a fun review then.
Yeah.
So
I have a sleeper. I have a sleeper terrible match that I will discuss here.
And the crowd was phenomenal.
Yeah, it's great.
I mean, and like Puerto Rico is known for red hot crowds. If you watch any of the old World Wrestling Council footage, and every now and then I'll dabble with that. They always have red hot crowds. There's some cities, there's some places in the world, some buildings, where you're just going to have red hot crowds. And Puerto Rico has always been known for their hot crowds. And it also helps that they hadn't been there in a while. That definitely helps. But, and it also helps that Bad Bunny was on the show. And
yeah.
undoubtedly the biggest celebrity in Puerto Rico without question. And, one of the biggest music stars in the world, irregardless of, whatever niches that music falls into these days. So anyway, I don't know. Let's break it down.
Yeah, let's start with the main event. Let's talk about Cody and Brock Lesnar. So now I did not watch this live on Saturday, but because I was at a AEW show while the show was going on. So I got texts from some people saying like, "Oh, Cody beat Brock," and I'm like, "Well, hey, cool, not too bad." And then when I watched this match the next day, he beat him 1, 2, 3. But man, this wasn't a win in the traditional sense of a win, man. If for people that did not see this match, essentially Cody Rhodes went at Brock right away at the bell. Brock then pretty much decimated the guy for about 7 minutes. Cody took down the turnbuckle, threw Brock into the turnbuckle. Brock got busted open. They did not stop the match and stitch him up like they did with Finn Balor at WrestleMania or whatever. They just kind of let him bleed because obviously it was an intention for him to bleed here. So they kind of let it go, which again, that just kind of makes it kind of weird, but whatever. And then, they're kind of fighting back and forth. Brock Lesnar has Cody Rhodes in the submission in his like Kimura lock or whatever. And then Cody Rhodes just kind of like stands up slightly, and then it's 1, 2, 3, and then Cody Rhodes rolls out of the ring and walks out as if like, oh my God, I got a fast one on him. Oh my God. And kind of runs out of the ring as quickly as he possibly can to get away from Brock Lesnar, who, he knows is going to be upset and basically destroyed him for, 9 minutes. This is not a good win. Like, people can say, oh, he beat Brock, but this doesn't tell me that there are high hopes yet for Cody. That we're getting this story on track here. I mean, this was a lucky ass win by Cody.
I don't know.
Joe, he didn't have any offensive moves.
I agree with,
and he won via being in a submission and pinning the guy, and then rolled out of the ring immediately.
Yeah, I agree with everything you're saying, but I think the visual of Brock Lesnar bleeding buckets in the ring and look, it was a very physical match, and Cody allowed Brock to put him through some very physical spots, and and I think that was by design. It felt like a war, and obviously the spot they did that busted Brock open, which only a star of Brock's magnitude can really get away with at this point. I mean, in a vacuum, I love the match. I mean, because I love Brock's stuff.
Oh, it was a war. Yeah, it was a war. It was in a vacuum. It was a hell of a fucking great match. I loved it.
I mean, it's best match on the show for my money. I mean, the Bad Bunny Damian Priest thing was fun, and it was perfect for that crowd. But for my tastes, this was the best match on the show. I see what you're saying. I don't know if I'm fully on board because I think beating Brock and also leaving him a bloody mess the way that he did, I don't think it came across as poorly as you think it did. So I think I'm going to have to side on disagreeing with you.
That's fair. I'm just of the mindset that if we're truly saying that, no, this guy, we're still doing this. We're still doing this thing with Cody. Like, I don't know if getting his ass handed to him for 9 minutes and then getting a banana peel win is exactly the way that I would book the guy who just...
That's what's weird, because I agree with you, but at the same time, Brock is not going to take 3 crossroads and get pinned in the middle.
Well, I agree, but then why did they book Cody versus Brock?
You're absolutely right.
And they're doing it again at Night of Champions, and guess what? Brock's not taking 3 crossroads in the middle of the ring for a 1, 2, 3 there either.
And there's and the other thing is there's no storyline justification for booking this match in the first place. Brock just came out and attacked Cody, and we still don't know why. He just came out and attacked him.
And then Cody said, "I want a challenge. Challenge me. Take me to the limit." And then he got his ass handed to him for 9 minutes. It's like, all right. Well.
I know why Cody wanted to face Brock, but we still don't know why Brock attacked Cody. They never gave any explanation for that. And now they're going to wrestle again, I guess. And, Cody's in this tournament for this, the draft, which we all know is just a ratings thing. I mean, doesn't mean anything. And already now, as you see, they're doing this tournament for the 3rd belt, and the SmackDown wrestlers are in it, which doesn't make any sense. And it's like, you just did this draft, you created a title for Raw, and SmackDown wrestlers are in the tournament.
Right.
And if a SmackDown wrestler wins, they're going back to... It's like...
Right. Well, Cody is no longer in it, sir. He lost in
that's
the
right.
3-way match to Finn and Miz. So...
Yeah, so, I told you I didn't think he was going to win it. I mean, I had a feeling...
At some point, are we going to push this guy again, or what are we going to do here? Like, what's going on?
He's gonna beat Roman when it no longer matters.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Let's guy's hot. The guy was hot. Maybe we should just,
No, that ship has sailed.
Yeah, I guess.
And
I guess I need to go with that standpoint that we're doing a whole new thing now. Like, I'm still thinking we're going to work on what we had in March, and that's not. Yeah, they're not doing that. It's a whole new story now.
That ship has sailed.
The story never ends.
And their ratings haven't been so hot. Some of their advanced ticket sales aren't looking as hot as they were. But we all saw that coming because you had the 2 hot stars and you didn't go with either one of them. And WWE fans see tag team titles as a demotion. And that's WWE's fault. That's Vince
they
McMahon's
did that.
fault.
They did that to themselves.
Exactly. So that's what they get what they deserve. You reap what you sow, whatever you want, however you want to phrase that. But yeah, you're right, Cody. And I agree with you that, winning with tricky roll-ups when you're locked in a submission isn't the best way to stay super hot. It is Brock. He was a bloody mess. That mitigates it to some degree.
Sure.
But, so I agree with you and I disagree with you.
Yeah, no. And I think getting a win over Brock Lesnar does mean something, but they did it in such a way that it didn't. I don't know that it means all that much. You know what I mean? Like it does mean a lot, and it also doesn't mean a lot because he got it in such a and somebody in the Note of chat room brought it up perfectly. Cody won, and it was basically like 1, 2, 3 Kid beating Razor Ramon on Raw in 1993. Like, he rolled him up, and then he ran out of the ring like, I did it! Yeah, I escaped. And it's like, all right. Like, and I get it's Brock, but, like, you don't have to put him against Brock. Like, if I'm rehabbing this guy, I'm having him fucking win matches definitively and say, motherfucker, I deserve that title. And everybody knows that I deserve that title. And everybody knows that I got fucked over at WrestleMania. And everybody knows that Solo Sikoa ran out there and that's why I lost. I didn't lose because I lost. I lost because that guy came out and interfered and that's why I lost. I should have won that match. I should be the champion and everybody fucking knows it. But instead he's rebuilding himself. And it's like, what? You had it. You were winning the match. You won the match until the guy ran out. And we're just going to say, nonetheless, I'll just move on and see this. It's like, but why am I applying? I'm trying to apply logic to WWE and I need to stop and you need to make me stop. Thank you, please.
His attitude is more, oh, shucks, than I'm pissed off because.
Right. Like, I want him he should have came out on Raw and said, everybody knows what happened at WrestleMania. We all saw it. And you know what? I'm going to do whatever I can. I'm getting back at that title. I'm getting back at Roman Reigns, and I'm going to finish this fucking story. You know what I mean? Like, you're not taking this away from me. I'm not letting the Bloodline take this away from me. I'm not letting anybody take this away from me. I should have had that match won, and everybody knows it.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Look.
And now he's getting banana peel wins over Brock and going, how have I escaped? He's doing fucking Rey Mysterio world title wins where he's, winning via roll up and then running out of the ring as quickly as possible before the big man beats him up. And it's like, okay, well, that's one way to rebuild the guy, I guess.
And I hate to keep doing this, but imagine a world where he had beat Roman for the title. Then it makes sense why Brock would attack him.
Yes.
Because Brock wants the title. Then it makes sense to beat Brock in this manner, because then you could do a rematch, and then he could beat Brock definitively the second time. And that buys you time until Roman comes back. And then Roman comes back and wants his title back. Everything would have made more sense if Cody would have won at WrestleMania. Everything. You could even be doing everything exactly the way you're doing it now. Had Cody won at WrestleMania. You could even do the dopey third title because Cody lost in that tournament anyway. You just didn't have to have him in it. They wouldn't have had to change a thing if Cody had won at WrestleMania, and you'd have the intrigue of when is Roman coming back to win his title, to get his title back.
Right. There's no way that Roman's going to sit at home and not be seething that his 955-day title reign or whatever got lost. He's going to be upset. Or like we said, then you have a whole new level of Bloodline stuff where we'll talk to that about it. Well, they're still doing that same story for some fucking reason, but it would make more sense again if Roman lost and he could say, hey, where were you? Solo, where were you? Usos, you didn't help me. Now you can just pivot to that too. If you want to keep him out of the title picture, or if you want him to get back in the title picture, he goes away for a little while and it's okay. When's Roman going to come back to claim his throne again? But instead it was a
business mistake. It was a business mistake. It was a storyline mistake. It was there's no arguing that it wasn't a huge mistake.
But of course, none of it fucking matters. So who cares? Yeah, but
none of it matters. And the thing about it is, it's more important that they hit whatever benchmark they're trying to hit with the title reign for Roman, because they're doing this whole.
He's almost at 1,000 days. He's very close to 1,000 days. Great. He'll pass Pedro Morales not that far after. Okay, great. And then. Yeah. Then it's going to take years, so I don't know what they're going to do after that. After he passes Pedro, it's like, okay, now what?
I don't know what their benchmark is, but they have one. It can't be the record because he can't ever get there. But they're doing this thing. They have this initiative. One of the things they have a hard on for right now is rewriting the record book to have more modern. If you've noticed, I don't know if you've picked up on this. It's not just with Roman. They're now touting how long Bianca Belair has held her title. Mm-hmm. And they're saying how
the longest in modern history, the longest title reign in modern women's history, because they know the Fabulous Moolah is like 35-year reign or whatever. They're never, obviously you're never catching that. So we're just going to stop at that point and say, okay, from 1980 whatever on, yes, she's the longest.
Yeah, so they're doing this thing where they want to have their current stars holding these records. Okay. So they have some benchmark in mind for Roman. I don't know what it is. And they're just going to rewrite their record book for Roman. He's never catching Bruno. But they're going to reframe it as a modern record, whatever that means to them. They've probably decided already. Again, even just to catch Hogan's first one, though, you have to go many more years. At least 2-3 more years or something, right? 2 more years. I don't know how you keep the bloodline fresh that long. People are tired of it already, which again was predictable. And we've talked about it ad nauseum. I mean, but now their fans are tired of that because it really was only hot for 4 or 5 months in its whole run. And it's right back to being boring again. Same old shit.
Well,
the match on this
you want to get to that match? You want to get to that match on the show?
Let's do it.
This is one of the matches I thought sucked. I thought this match fucking sucked. Yeah. I hated this match. This is awful. Done.
Well, yeah.
Not good.
Listen,
you got all these talented guys and all these guys that I think are good workers. I think every single person in this match, Solo Sikoa, I still don't know about him. The jury's still out on him. I know Jimmy and Jay are good. I know Kevin Owens is great. Matt Riddle is very good. Sami Zayn, great. All these guys are so good, and we have a 22-minute match that kills this crowd. This crowd is bored to fucking tears by these guys, which how do you make this crowd bored? They found a way, and half the match is Jay kicking Sammy in the corner and saying, "You broke my family up. This is all because of you. This is all because of you." And I'm like, oh my God. And then Solo Sikoa, the whole match is them all staring at each other. They tag each other and they stare at one another. And Michael Cole says, "There's been a lot of tension among the Bloodline. Where does Solo Sikoa?" I'm like, what are we? Stop. How are we doing this again? How is this happening again? And you know, then the Corey Graves made, "Oh, the tribal chief certainly has thoughts about how the Bloodline are operating tonight." I'm like, come on, really? This is what we're doing? And then we get the spot where Solo almost hits, you know, Jay, I think it was Jay, and Jay, "Hit me, Solo, hit me, brother, hit me, brother." And I'm like, oh my God. And then they still win, of course, because like you can't have them lose. So then eventually they just pin Matt Riddle and win no matter what. But I was like, fuck this match, fuck this story, and fuck this match. This match stunk. 22 minutes of my life I'm never getting back. Telling these dopey ass, "Could have been family. This is my family. You broke us up. It's all because of you." It's like, oh my God.
We're right back to the community theater bullshit. And this is what I'm talking about, where there's a cap on how much I can enjoy a WWE show, because I'm never gonna like this shit. It's people know our stance on this by now. I have no use for this, and we're right back to where we started, with Jey Uso having grievances with everybody and cutting mid-match promos, and I have no use.
I'm over it. Yeah, I am good.
Just none.
How can they do this? They can't keep getting away with this show. They can't just keep saying, "Oh, certainly the wise man will have thoughts about how the Bloodline is not seeing eye to eye here tonight." It's like, why are these people together? Why are they together? Why does this group exist? Like, I wouldn't do this. I would just leave. You know what I mean? Like, if I was Jay, I'd be like, you know, I don't really need this. This is a lot of tension all the time. Constantly. This doesn't help me at all. This isn't fun.
Listen.
It sucks. It's just garbage. It's just garbage.
Stop yelling at me.
Yeah, but the match wasn't that good either, right? Am I wrong? Am I so overwhelmed by my hatred for the community theater that I didn't think this was any good though, right?
No, I mean, it was just there.
It was just a perfunctory 22-minute match. Yeah.
Way too long. Now, look, they had something impossible to follow. Okay. But.
Well, they could have had a good match. They could have had a good match to follow it.
Yeah, you could get them back. I mean, you know, they were up for Cody versus Brock. And I don't know if you saw, but after the show went off the air, they gave Brock a standing ovation, and Brock was soaking it all in. I mean, so it's not like Bad Bunny completely decimated and sucked all the energy out of the crowd. It's just that this match weren't able to get them back. And you can excuse them for the first 5 or 6 minutes. Okay? But like you're saying, if the match was good, and if people were into the story, which they weren't, they could have gotten this crowd back because the main event did. It's not like the crowd was completely drained of all of their energy. So, no, I'm with you. This was not good. This Bloodline stuff isn't any good, and it's funny because some of the biggest WWE supporters out there have turned on the Bloodline.
Yeah.
No one's enjoying this anymore. It's wheel spinning. It's repetitive. And look, as long as they want to hit whatever mythical number they want to hit with Roman, they've got to keep recycling this shit. And, I hate to use the phrase, but it just is what it is. You have to live with it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the San Juan street fight there. Bad Bunny versus Damian Priest, 25 minutes and 3 seconds. Just a molten hot crowd the entire time for this match. Bad Bunny goes out there again and impresses as he's done. Him and Logan Paul are like two of the best workers in this company. I don't know if that's like I want to give them credit or like admonish WWE for the fact that these guys roll in here and have these matches. And I know like people will say, oh, well, they script the matches. These guys still get it. They have charisma beyond anything that any of these WWE wrestlers have. They have just a presence that none of these well-trained WWE superstars. You know what I mean? That we create superstars. We don't create wrestlers. We create WWE superstars. None of their superstars have any sort of like star power, charisma, it factor, any of that. And then this guy comes into the fucking building and just owns the room from day one, from the second he walks out. And the second he walked into this company, he owned it. He's still owning it. He goes out here and has another impressive match. And more than that, I think what was cool about this match and so much fun about it was that it was kind of a love letter to Puerto Rican wrestling in a lot of ways too. And they did, you have Carlito come out and he got like a Bruno 1974 MSG did you even believe that the reaction that Carlito got here? That was one of the loudest pops I've ever heard in my entire life for Carlito coming out. And then Savio Vega with a little less of a pop from my man Savio, but that's okay.
Well, because they spoiled that. They they showed him earlier in the show, which they shouldn't have done.
They should not have done, no.
They should have allowed him to be a surprise. So I think that's why he didn't get. They were almost expecting him at some point, And what's funny is, I think this was a bought show, right? And he was the promoter. Wasn't
I don't know. Here? That would make sense. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, this was a sold show, and Savio Vega was the promoter.
Oh, well, there you go. Get yourself on the show then, pal.
I think Dave Meltzer reported that. So when, and plus he has a long history, and it's like, the thing about it though is, I don't know, I'm not in the culture, so I don't know if people like Carlos Colon and, TNT, which was, Savio Vega's gimmick for all those years before he came to the mainland and became Savio Vega. He was TNT on the island. I don't know if they've endured in the culture. Like, I don't know if they're still cultural figures. You know what I mean? Like, Carlito's still young enough. Carlito's still young enough to where some of the fans there may have seen him wrestle locally before he went to WWE, because you're only talking 20 years ago. So if you're 40, when you were in your 20s, you may have seen him wrestle for the local promotion, right? But that's not the case with Savio Vega. And that's not the case with Carlos Colon. But when Bad Bunny did the Carlos Colon
I was going to say, that crowd went fucking apeshit when he set up and did the exactly the way that Carlos Colon did the figure four, with rising up. And Michael Cole says, Ric Flair spent plenty of time in Puerto Rico, and obviously a nod to Ric Flair. It's like, no.
Absolute joke.
God damn it. I was like, what?
And a lot of people on Twitter showing ass too with that one. Who you would think
I didn't even see what that was all about. But yeah,
everyone thought it was Flair.
No,
and
when did Ric Flair ever put both of his hands on the ground and lift his upper body up while in the figure four?
Well, even the setup to the hold.
The whole thing was Carlos Colon. What are we doing? Come on.
Bad Bunny undoubtedly was doing a Carlos Colon tribute.
Yes.
My question, and I posed this to American Numbers in our Discord. He does some work for us too on the site, a statistician. My question was, did the fans pick up that it was a Carlos Colon spot? Because again, I don't know if Carlos Colon has endured in the culture the way that Ric Flair has in our culture. Right? You know what I mean? And he said, yes, they absolutely knew that was a Colon.
That pop was huge.
And the pop was huge. As bonkers as they went, you would think that they didn't think it was a Ric Flair tribute, because they went insane when he locked on that figure four. So, and look, we know Bad Bunny is a wrestling fan, and we know he takes this very seriously, and we know he's not doing it for the money. He don't need the money. And he's as good as you can be for a part-time celebrity. Okay? So he always gives it 110%, and he was obviously into it for a million different reasons on this show. So good on him for doing that spot. And, in a crowd full of people where, they pan the crowd, it looks like people in their 20s and 30s. Good on them for recognizing that was a Carlos Colon spot. Mm-hmm. It's not like this was a crowd full of 70-year-olds. There's families and young people. It's a WWE crowd. So that was good to see. Shame on the announcers. Shame on them. Okay?
He's also a WWE Hall of Famer. It's not like you can't say the name Carlos Colon. He's in your fucking Hall of Fame. You know what I mean? Like, he's in your Hall of Fame.
I hear you. But yeah, I mean, they recognize Savio, obviously, and they could be recognizing him from his WWE days more than, his TNT days, or maybe they, if they knew the clone spots, maybe they know,
And Savio, as far as I know, because I have a few Puerto Rican friends, and they, they still know Savio because he still promotes in Puerto Rico as well. He's still a very active member of, that the wrestling culture there, and in terms of promoting shows and being active and obvious. So I think that they know him too. I think that they're well aware of him. But yeah, like you said, I don't know if a lot, like the fan base there knows him as TNT / like the modern Savio Vega, or if they know him more as, Savio Vega, the WWF guy in the mid 90s, but probably a little bit of both. Probably a little bit of both.
If they know the Cologne spots, maybe they know him too, or remember him from those days. That's entirely possible. But as a total package, this was exactly what this was booked for that crowd, and the crowd ate it up, and this could have been more of a success. Damian Priest did a great job, obviously with a celebrity. Bad Bunny, obviously, he didn't have to do a great job. He was going to be over as fuck no matter what he did, but he was great. And it was a great spectacle. I'll put it that way. It was a great spectacle. So yeah, it landed for sure. And, they did the whole deal, and this is very unlike WWE. So give them a little credit. They did the whole deal where Damian Priest had him beat and picked him up, so they didn't completely bury Damian Priest for just losing a street fight to a celebrity. They kind of told the story that he did really, he beat him, but he just wanted to punish him, and, Bad Bunny obviously was going to win the match. We all knew that. And, he came back and won. So it's fun. It was really fun. And the crowd really loved it and everything.
Yeah. I'll give credit to Bad Bunny too, that he took some spots that I did not like. He doesn't have to take a lot of these spots. And I think a lot of it was, like you said, they made Damian Priest look really strong here because he gave Bad Bunny a lot. He gave him, he put him through the table on the outside with the, I forget exactly what the move was, some sort of drive, kind of like a slam onto a, not exactly a power bomb, but some sort of power slam onto, the tables outside the ring or whatever. And Bad Bunny, he took a lot of punishment here. And in the end, you're not thinking, oh man, Damian Priest lost, to a celebrity. It was like, man, Damian Priest beat the shit out of this guy, had him beat, and then still, Bad Bunny just kind of prevailed and was able to kind of keep things going. So, yeah, they did a good job of protecting Priest here, too, where like, yeah, he does, like you said, he does not look like a chump losing to this celebrity here. And Bad Bunny doesn't feel like you're typical celebrity that won via a banana peel or whatever. It's like, no, this guy worked his ass off for 25 minutes and deserved this win just as much as any other wrestler would have deserved his win. And obviously he had the X factor of being able to use the weapons and have the help of, Carlito and Savio Vega or whatever. But yeah, that's good. This was booked perfectly from beginning to end for all the shit that I give WWE and all the shit that we collectively give WWE. You couldn't have booked this match better than the way you did. It was exactly, it maybe got a little too long in the tooth at certain points. Like maybe you could have shaved a couple minutes off, but that's me just really nitpicking. I think from the beginning to the end, they nailed this, and they deserve credit for figuring it out, how to do this perfectly, letting the fans go home happy, and I thought they just nailed everything about this match. Just perfect.
Yeah, it felt like a party. Like a party.
Rhea Ripley, Zelena Vega, WWE SmackDown Women's Title match here. This was the other pretty bad match. Zelena, hey, I'm glad, I'm glad she got the Puerto Rican flag, and I'm glad everybody was chanting for her and cheering for her, and I'm glad that she was emotional and crying, but she was horrible in this match. I thought she was so fucking terrible in this match. And I'm not blaming Rhea Ripley for this, because I've seen Rhea Ripley have some really, really good matches with a lot of women all across the world. This was not one of them. This was brutal. I thought Zelena Vega was fucking awful in this match.
Well, look. Here's the thing. Zelena Vega stinks. So it's not a surprise that, she wasn't any good in the match. So what was surprising to me is it was basically a squash. They didn't even tease.
They didn't even give you a second. Once that bell rang and she was done showing everybody the Puerto Rican flag or whatever, they were like, all right, enough of that. She's going to get her ass kicked. All right. So strap in, because you're not getting you're going to get Bad Bunny in a minute. So you'll be fine. But right now you're not getting shit, because they decimated her. Rhea just beat her ass here.
Good on them for at least booking it. They went to Puerto Rico. And they gave these Puerto Rican people a Puerto Rican wrestling show, the best that they could with their roster. So good on them for booking Vega in the match. They didn't have to do that. WWE, you know how they are with local crowds, thumbing their nose at them. They got a million women they could have put in here. So at minimum, at least they gave them Zelena Vega. And at least they gave Zelena Vega the moment. She was obviously emotional and all that. But then it was just a fucking squash match. So I really don't have much to add. You know, it's just beat her ass for 5 minutes and beat her.
She beat her, and then they left Zelena in the ring for a little bit so everybody could cheer for her. Like, hey, yeah,
right.
Thanks for coming. And she started crying again. And I was like, all right, well,
yeah,
there you go. Well, have fun. But no, that's the way you should have booked it anyway, too. Because Rhea Ripley does not need to be giving any offense to Zelena Vega. You know what I mean? Like, they treated Zelena, they gave Zelena the moment where she came out and she did her entrance and she hugged her family. And then she threw the shoe at Rhea Ripley, and then they were like, all right, now that's the end of that. So we're done. Now Rhea's just going to beat you, and we're going to move on with our lives. So not good at all, but the right result for sure. Rhea Ripley definitively winning to retain her title. Even though she's on Raw, but she's going to keep the SmackDown title, I guess, for now. I don't know when we're going to do the switch over thing that we know that they're going to do, or they're just never going to do it. I don't know. Maybe the Rhea Ripley will be the SmackDown Women's Champion on Raw, and Bianca Belair will be the Raw Women's Champion on SmackDown.
Matter.
Who cares? It doesn't matter.
It's the brand split isn't real. We all know that. It's not going to last.
There has to be rules to this thing, Joe. Come on.
It's a ratings gimmick. This tournament and this title is a ratings gimmick. The thing about this company is nothing they do is for long-term benefit of anything. It's just what's the next thing that can pop the next number. That's all it is. Even more so when Vince is around. Vince doesn't give a shit about anything long-term that's going to matter in 20 years. He's not going to be around in 20 years. You know, he just, all of these things. And next year, you know, the draft is just a ratings. That's why they stretch it out over like 2 weeks and 4 different shows. You know, so, and the same thing with this title tournament. This is just to prop up ratings during the NBA playoffs. That's all any of this is.
Austin Theory, Bobby Lashley, Bronson Reed, U.S. title triple threat match. Yeah, this was not good either.
I have absolutely nothing to say. It's just existing.
Okay, I was hoping you did, because my notes, there are none. I have 2. I don't even have a star rating. Did I watch? I think I watched it. I'm pretty sure I watched it. My notes have enter, and then I just go right into Zelena Vega versus Ripley. So I don't know, Joe. Take it away. What do you got to say about the United States triple threat title match?
I mean, it was there and it existed, and it was any second-hour Raw match you've ever seen in your life.
Right.
What else
6 minutes, 51 seconds. Austin Theory gets the win to retain his title. All right.
That's why I can't. It's like I can't go all the way and be like, oh, this is a great show. You have the community theater bullshit. You have a Rhea Ripley squash. You have this 3-way match, which was a nothing match. You have what we're going to talk about. I love the opener, but there's something about the opener that I hated. It's just too much WWE bullshit creeps into their shows to where there's just a ceiling on how much I'm ever going to like them. Anyway, next match.
Yeah, let's talk about Seth Rollins versus Omos. 10 minutes and 31 seconds. I thought this was awesome. This was good. What did you think of this match?
I thought Rollins was incredible.
Yes,
and
because I thought Omos couldn't do shit. And he can't. And most people that worked with him have nothing to do with Omos. They don't know what to do. Brock tried, but eventually was just like, I'm just going to beat this guy's ass. All right, that's it. And everybody else has just kind of worked around the limitations of Omos. I got to give credit where it's due here. Seth said, all right, man, what can you do? What can you not do? What can you do? Cool. We're going to do those. What can you not do? That's fine. We're not going to do any of that. I'll do all the work. You stand around and just scream occasionally. And it fucking worked. It was a very good big man, little man, high flyer versus monster, David versus Goliath, whatever you want to call it. It worked. It was good. It's a classic pro wrestling story, a classic pro wrestling match structure, and credit where it's due. They didn't try to reinvent the wheel here. Seth just went and did that match style and did it as good as I've seen anybody work with a big man in a long, long time, and especially with Omos, who is just not very good. But here he looked like he actually is a competent pro wrestler when he's not.
You know, one of the misused terms is carry job. People will throw that around and say that somebody carried someone in a match, and this is a carry job. This is like the perfect example, one that you can point to when people try to use that term or ask, what does it mean when there's a carry job in pro wrestling? Like, this was clearly it, because it was one guy really carrying the weight almost entirely on his shoulders for the match and getting something out of someone who, like you said, no one else has been able to get anything out of this guy. And Seth Rollins went in there and actually had a good match with him.
Yeah.
Which is like the unthinkable, to have a good match with Omos, who just isn't any good. Seth, this probably isn't the right time to bring this up, but I still say, I do think he's going to end up in AEW one day, and I think he's going to have a hell of a run. I think that a lot of his rah-rah stuff is just him being a good company man. I don't believe any of these people are loyal to any of these companies. Some of them are, but very few of them are. And I think that if you read between the lines with a lot of his comments, how he wants to be a top guy, but he knows that he can't ever be with Roman around. He has said that. And he just strikes me as the kind of guy who at some point is going to want a new challenge and a new environment and a place where he has more of a fair shot to be the top guy. Do I think he could be the top guy in AEW? I don't know. But does he think he can be? That's all that really matters. And he's been talking a lot of smack about how he knows it's not going to happen for him here. And he's getting a little older. He's got more money than he can ever spend, between him and his wife being the huge stars and millionaires many times over. He's obviously got pals in that other company. I could see it. I mean, he's having a time of his life right now doing this character, but he's right. He'll never be the top guy here. And if he's driven,
and he might win this dopey. He might win this dopey third title, but I
think he's going to win it.
And he knows, and everybody knows. Like those guys in the company know what this title is.
It doesn't mean right. Yeah. They of course. So, long term, I think that's something to keep an eye on. So I don't know. Like I said, this was probably not the right time to have that discussion, but I don't know. He was really good here, though.
He was fantastic. Yeah, credit where it's due. We laugh about freaking a lot or whatever, but yeah, this was this guy coming to work and saying, I'm gonna make a fucking hell of a match out of this guy. Like, you give me this challenge.
That was a pro.
Yeah. You're gonna give me this challenge of this guy that's a stiff and nobody knows what to do with him and no one's had a good match with him. Fuck all you. I'm gonna prove that you can have a good match with this guy. That was one of those matches. That was one of those you walk to the back and say, that's how it's done. You know what I mean? That's how you have a match.
This is Ric Flair in 1990 working with El Gigante and the Junkyard Dog.
Yes.
That's what this was.
Yeah.
If people need a comp. An extremely dated comp. But
a comp.
That's the comp. I mean, when Flair was having those matches, that no one could believe how good the matches he was having with El Gigante and the Junkyard Dog in 1990. That's what this was.
And then the opener, I think for most people, probably neck and neck with Bad Bunny and Damian Priest is their match of the night. Bianca Belair and Io Skye. Bianca does win 18 minutes and 1 second. So now I thought this was pretty damn good, but I am fascinated to hear. You said you had one big gripe about the match. What was the gripe you had? I'm very, very curious.
My gripe is this was trending to be a great match, not a good one. Okay. This fucking ruled. You had a crowd that wasn't going along and they were cheering for the wrong person. I love that. Now, I will deduct because, and it's not their fault, but the wrestlers didn't go with it. And I understand in WWE, you're not allowed. The agent tells you what to do, lays out the story, and then you got to go out there and tell it. I get that. In a perfect world, Io Skye starts playing to the crowd and Bianca starts working heel. They're not going to do that in this company. Okay. I went to a WCW house show in 1991 and I saw Arn Anderson and Barry Windham wrestle the Wild-Eyed Southern Boys, Tracy Smothers and Steve Armstrong. And I don't think they were the Young Pistols yet. I think they were still the Wild-Eyed Southern Boys, Rich. And that Meadowlands crowd was all about the Horsemen. And we turned the Wild-Eyed Southern Boys heel that night because all four of those guys went with it. And that, to this day, what is that, 33 years ago?
Yeah.
32 years ago, whatever it was. To this day is one of the most memorable live matches I've ever seen. I remember with a photographic memory, okay, Arn Anderson hitting a spine buster on Tracy Smothers and getting up and waving his arms up in the air to get the crowd going. And they were at heels, but they went with it. And it was the hottest match of the night because of it. Okay? And you can't do that in WWE. I understand that, but they still had a great match. And then we got the damage control shit at the end.
Yeah. Okay. I figured the end was exactly what, because I couldn't figure out what your complaint could have been in the first 17 minutes and 50 seconds of this match, which were just these two women beating the ever living shit out of each other, just like
so great
in a way that most WWE women's matches don't contain. Like this level of just like they were just out there fucking throwing down. Bianca Belair is so good, and Io Skye, Io Shirai speaks for herself as well, but they just went out. They were just brutalizing each other, big spots, big bombs, just good action, hot crowd. Yeah, everything was great. But yeah, I figured the last 10 seconds of this match is what really soured you on it, and rightfully so.
Bianca dropped her on her head on the press slam. Did you catch that?
Yes, she did. Yeah, she's selling her shoulder, so she lifts her up, but then goes, I can't hold her up because of my shoulder. So then she just with one hand drops her on her fucking neck and
drops her on her fucking head.
Yeah, I'm sure it was a planned spot. Like I don't know if it was supposed to. Maybe it was supposed to turn around a little bit more or get down a little bit more, but it worked out perfectly. It was fine and it made the match that much better, man. Sometimes it's not ballet out there like you always like to say. I mean, it worked for the spot. Yeah, Bianca, couldn't lift her anymore. She just dropped on her fucking head. And it made me stand up and take notice. And yeah, the rest of the match was better for it.
But I mean, the run in ruined a great match. And I know they're planting seeds of dissension with damage control. Like I could give a fuck.
Can you? Oh, you're on the edge of your seat wondering if and when damage control is going to break up. Who knows?
How can anyone possibly care?
This team that never wins, never does anything.
But my thing is, if Bianca was going to win anyway, why don't you just have her win and then do your goofy angle afterwards? But I guess the idea is you have to have Io think that Bayley cost her the match, right? That's the idea behind it. But you could have Bianca win and have damage control come out and then have Bayley accidentally hit Io Skye. There's other things you can do, right? It just ruined the match for me. And I don't know what's wrong with Bayley, but she has just not been the same in any regard since she came back from the injury. Her promos stink, okay? Her matches aren't any good. And she couldn't even get this run in right. Like, she runs in and gets in the ring, and she's supposed to get thrown out of the ring. She can't even take a simple out of the ring bump properly. She gets tied up in the bottom rope. What the fuck is wrong with Bayley?
Yeah, her legs don't seem to work anymore. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure what happened.
Everybody's busy focusing on the dopey outfit she was wearing, like with the holes on the legs. Like, was that supposed to be like, everyone thinks that was some kind of salacious outfit. I didn't think it was because of that holes.
I guess if you're 13, if you're 13, like, a fraction of Bayley's exposed buttocks would get you moving. But yeah, okay, great, cool. Yeah,
everyone's focused. How about we focus on the fact that she can't take a basic out of the ring bump anymore? Like, what's wrong with her?
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, there's something wrong with, like, she is not, either she is completely checked out and watching the clock, and that's possible.
That's very possible with her.
Because she's seeing all the fun that fucking Monet is having out there. And
she seems to travel quite well. She seems to travel quite well to other shows very often.
Yeah, she's following her around, globetrotting with her, watching her wrestle. And maybe she's getting the itch to do something a little more creative now that the money has been made. You know what I mean? I don't know. Or for all I know, she's under contract for 4 more years. I don't fucking know. All I know is she stinks now. And there was definitely a time where I would have argued she was the best of the 4.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Bell to bell. She was never the biggest star, ever. But I would have argued during certain periods that she was the best bell to bell because she was the cleanest worker, without a doubt. We all know Charlotte's not a clean worker. We all know Sasha isn't a clean worker. And we know Becky just is an average pro wrestler. Is that fair to say?
Yeah,
that's
this fair.
Argument.
Yeah, no, I know people pretend, but yeah, she's average.
But the biggest star, she became the biggest star. She peaked higher than Sasha. If I don't want to get in it. She undoubtedly peaked as a bigger star than Sasha Banks. You want to argue Sasha's a bigger star overall? Go have that argument. I'm not interested in it. But the thing with Bayley is she was never the biggest star, but her matches may not have peaked as high as Charlotte's matches do or Sasha's matches do. Like, if you plotted out the four of them and ranked them in every category, Bayley wouldn't like win any of them. But I think she's like I'd argue she was the most solid worker of the four. Not anymore. Like, I think she's bad. I don't know what's going on. Injury and age catching up or motivation. I don't know what it is. But even this run-in was pretty embarrassing. But look, still a really good match. It just, man, I was really getting into this match. And then they sports entertainment it up, and it's just.
Yeah, for people that did not see the finish, what was going on is Io was on the top rope, ready to kind of finish off Bianca Belair. And Bayley ran in and started holding on to Bianca's hair. And then the referee was like, hey, don't do that. And I guess that 0.2 seconds where the referee was like, hey, don't do that, Bianca shot up and then threw Io off the top rope. And then, like, that's how she won. It was like, oh, okay. Like, it was weird. You know what I mean? It was done in a very, because, like you said, because Bayley kind of missed her spot and didn't do it right away. So it looked dumb where Io went to the top rope and, like, had the match won. It was ready to go. It was like, all she had to do was fall down. And, yeah, Bianca, the referee has to like glance over and be like, hey, don't touch her hair. What are you doing? And then I guess that's enough for the opening to, it was, again, just really weird and just, it put a little bit of a sour note, but I still think this match was pretty fucking great. So, and they've had the women in WWE have had a good year with WrestleMania Night 1 with Charlotte and Rhea, which was great. And this match, which was great. They've done a pretty good job this year. They've had some pretty high level matches, but Damage Control, not as excited for the future of Damage Control. So
poorly booked division.
Yeah.
Where there have been, at least on the pay-per-views, like you're saying, some very good matches, no doubt about it.
Yeah. They have no idea what to do with Becky, so she's fucking around with a heel Trish Stratus. The Damage Control just loses all the time, but we're supposed to pretend that they don't lose all the time for some reason. It's all strange, but all right.
Yeah.
And there you go. That was WWE Backlash from Puerto Rico. And there you go. So now we got about an hour, Joe, to get to all of these other. Just again, I said this is not a bounce around Japan. This is a classic 2014 flagship. We got to talk Big Japan. We got to talk Dragongate. We got to talk about Champion Carnival, and we got to talk about Shotaro Ashino. Joe, where do you want to start? The floor is yours. I'll let you choose.
Where I would start is. There's a theme to these matches this week, and that's all of these promotions giving new blood a chance. And we've talked about that with New Japan over the last couple of weeks, and it's exciting and it's fresh and it's good. And we're seeing that happen in a lot of promotions in Japan right now. And, I have to give Big Japan credit because, 1,828 fans in that little Yokohama bunker building there. That might not make anybody's head turn for a bigger company, but they've had a really rough go since the pandemic. And to do almost 2,000 fans for that show and then crown a new champion and in a shocking win. No one really expected this. And to beat the guy that he beat, Okabayashi, who's been the mainstay there for years and years and years. And, that was, and the show was great. The entire Endless Survivor show from start to finish was a great show. And, we'll get to it. But then All Japan finally pulling the trigger on Shotaro Ashino. And then, he gets injured. He breaks his arm, unfortunately, in the final 30 seconds of that match, which is just crushing. It reminds me of Finn Balor winning the Universal title and then getting injured immediately. And then they never went back to him. That's what this reminded me of. They finally pulled the trigger on Ashino, who we had written off for dead 4 weeks ago on this show. And they go all the way with him. He wins the tournament. He gets hurt. But again, an example, trying someone new. And then Dragongate, which is where I think we should start. with Kakuta. And they tell this story of, what was it, a year ago or 2 years ago?
2 years ago, yeah. For people that don't know, and obviously if you want even more details about this, great review done by Case Lowe at voicesofwrestling.com, all into the story, the background and links to everything and GIFs and whatnot of the entire story of Kakuta. We'll kind of do the cliff notes here. But 2 years ago, he is in a match with Shun Skywalker for the Dreamgate. It's like the biggest spot of his career. And they do a drop toe hold. A drop toe hold, Joe. How many times does a professional wrestler do a drop toe hold with no problem whatsoever?
John Moxley did one in that bloodbath of a cage match last night.
Yep.
I mean, yeah, it's just common move.
Yeah, every couple weeks into wrestling school, you're probably doing drop toe holds to guys. Does a drop toe hold, shoulder blows out, done. He tries to continue the match because it's the biggest spot he's ever been in, and the other wrestlers are like, no, don't do. And Shun Skywalker's even like, what the fuck? And it's chaos because they don't know what the fuck to do. It's the main event. It's a big time spot. It's minutes into the match. What the hell are we going to do here? Eventually, they throw in the towel for the guy and they just say, no, the match is over. We got to end this thing. You can't work. Your shoulder's fucked. We know it's fucked. You know it's fucked. It's over. And Shun Skywalker's pissed. Like, it's all a weird moment. Shun Skywalker's pissed because he's thinking, well, what the fuck, man? We just blew this main event. Like, what do we do? Like everybody, the tensions were high for everybody. Nobody's mad at Kakuta. It's just kind of like everyone's annoyed because this match just ended in seconds or whatever. So, yeah, he has... Yeah, and
they're trying to plant the seeds for a generational rivalry and all of those things.
Right. They wanted so much out of this match, and they got a minute, and this guy's shoulder blew out, and it's like, fuck, all right.
But now they've spun it into a positive.
They spun it into a positive, and then he worked his way back and worked his way back and worked his way back, and he came back last year at Dead or Alive, and now he's back here at this show, and he's in the main event, and he beats Shun Skywalker to win the match, and it's a match that was filled with callbacks. They do a drop toe hold, and the crowd goes, oh, yeah. And Kakuta's kind of on the ground for a little bit, and like a little longer than you would be for a drop toe hold. And Shun Skywalker, who's such a fucking shit, it's just the biggest fucking asshole in Dragongate. It's just like, ha 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 ha. He's done it again.
People have to understand. It's like the first time they wrestled, both of these guys were in very different places. Shun Skywalker was still this baby face who had just. They had just crowned him, the champion, and he's this babyface guy and this babyface high flyer, and it's hip hop Kakuta, I think, at that point, where he's still doing his baby's first gimmick kind of deal that Dragongate does with everybody, right? And they're kind of just planting the seeds for this to become a future generational rivalry where they're going to have all the, So they were in very different places at the time of the first match. So what people have to understand about Shun Skywalker now is he's gone insane.
Yeah, he is fucking nuts.
He's a crazy person, and he wears all black. It's not subtle. He's a fucking bad guy, and he wears all black, and he's crazy. And, he's cut down on the flying to some degree, and, and he's just, like you're saying, he laughs at people's misfortune. He's evil.
He makes goat noises. He just makes goat noises for no reason.
He's evil in a I'm unbalanced and I'm crazy way. It's not the traditional pro wrestling heel. I'm going to poke you in the eyes and hold the tights. He's crazy is the idea here. He's gone nuts. The whole masquerade, you could take this is Dragongate. So of course there's a lore, the whole masquerade breakup and all of that. It has all made this man a crazy person. So they're in very different places right now. And yes, I didn't mean to cut you off, but that's kind of like, why he was behaving the way he was in the match. But
right. And then they just had a really, really, really good, like a real solid Dragongate main event, hard hitting. Kakuta gets up, the shoulder's fine, and he has to prove it to himself. He takes the exact same move. He sits in the ring for a little bit. Everyone's a little bit nervous. Shun Skywalker's laughing, and then he just gets up and goes, nope, I'm good. And then just starts going at this guy. And then the rest of the match is all about how he's persevering and how he's building it up. And yeah, just a really, really, really good main event here. They beat the ever-living shit out of each other again. So in a way, it wasn't like a classic Dragongate main event. It's not like a Dragongate main event from like 2013 or whatever, but a little bit more of what the house style is these days and what these guys work as, which is not a bunch of crazy high flying or whatever. And Dragongate never was just that. I think that's always kind of been a misnomer that people thought is every Dragongate match was everybody just doing gigantic flips and running as fast as possible and being Masato Yoshino. And that's not the case. There were some hard hitters in there too. Shingo, of course, the hardest of the hitters. But I thought this was good. I thought they were throwing bombs at each other, big kickouts, big moves back and forth. And Kakuta eventually gets the win and wins the title, obviously, wins the Dreamgate. And just a memorable moment. And just, I thought, a really, really, really fun match here from Dragongate. What did you think of this one?
Yeah, they worked it entirely around the events of the match from 2 years ago. And what Dragongate does for their big shows as well is during intermission for the home crowd, for the people watching at home, you don't just get a hard camera view of fans mulling around the building. What they do is they show you an old match. And the match they showed was the match where Kakuta blew out his shoulder. So even during the show, they were hammering home this story. And then, he does the drop toe hold, early in the match. And then the match is built around Shun Skywalker going after this motherfucker's shoulder. So like you're saying, this is not some stereotypical, I don't even know if it's true anymore, Dragongate style match. I don't even know if the stereotype is true, but that's not what this was. This was old school classic wrestling psychology. That's what this was. And the babyface overcoming it and his self-doubt and his injury and 2 years of climbing back to the top.
Right, and did it with lariats, too. Did it with that shoulder, because a lot of the match was Shun Skywalker daring Kakuta, hey, hit me with that arm. No, try that arm. Hit me with that arm. And eventually Kakuta being like, all right, motherfucker, and just takes his head off with lariats to end it. Saying, no, the shoulder's good, man. Trust me, the shoulder's fine.
Yeah, and, the first match was less than 1 year into Kakuta's career, and he was already getting a title shot. And he wins it here, and I think he was the fastest wrestler to win and open the Dreamgate title. And I think he's the youngest as well, if I recall properly. And, they turned that massive negative, something nobody had planned for, into a positive, and turned it into telling a story. And so often in pro wrestling that happens, where you get something you don't know. How many times have we talked about bookers being forced to do something because of stuff out of their control, and it often leads to the best and most creative stuff that they do, because it's like you're challenged. And they made a positive out of that unfortunate 5-minute match 2 years ago and turned it into a great story. And now this guy on a major show, in front of 2,700 people in that building in Aichi for Dead or Alive. It's kind of weird watching a Dead or Alive show without a wacky cage match, I have to admit.
I know. I didn't realize it until the match was over, or the show was over, and I went, oh my God, no cage. You're right. Holy shit.
You're waiting for the wacky cage match. It's a different Dragongate. This is not your Big Brother's Dragongate, and for better or worse. And, but this worked. This was a great match. I went 4.25 plus on this one. And
yeah, I'm 4.5. I'm 4.5. So I think Case was 4.75 with this too. And obviously he's going to have a little bit more emotional investment than both of us, as right. Somebody who watches everything from Dragongate and studies the promotion. But it's a match that I think if you're listening to this, you owe it to yourself to go out and watch this match.
Yeah, it's classic pro wrestling. And the post-match promo, it's Kakuta. He talked about how him and Skywalker and Strong Machine J and Yoshioka and Benkei and
Kota Minoura. Kota
Minoura is the sixth guy. And as the new Big Six. And for those who don't know, the Big Six, the last generation Big Six, Shima had deemed Takagi, Shingo, Yamato, Doi, Yoshino, Tozawa, and Hulk as the Big Six. And obviously Tozawa is gone. Hulk is a shell of his former self, although he's looked better lately.
I was going to say, I was going to put that in my review if we talked about his match in the show. He's, I don't know if it's Fountain of Youth. I'm not going to quite say Fountain of Youth, but he looked washed a couple years ago, and he looks a lot better now.
Yoshino retired. Doi, freelancer. Takagi, New Japan. Yamato, really the only one that's still kicking around and anywhere near his prime. So this is the new generation, and man, did he just put pressure on himself and those other five. And I can't really take issue with the 6 that they've chosen. You know, it's the right ones.
Those are the guys. Yeah, those are the guys.
It's interesting to see Strong Machine J in there, because I don't think a couple of years ago anyone would have imagined that. We all kind of thought, well, a lot of people kind of thought that initial 6-man run where they were the Triangle Gate champions with the whatever happened to Strong Machine G and Strong Machine.
I don't know what those
F.
guys are doing. Yeah, I don't
What
know what those
happened
guys.
to them?
They ran out of oil or something, and they're gone. So yeah,
they broke down and were unable to be fixed.
Yeah, that was true. I think Jay at one point said they were supply chain issues with their parts. So unfortunately, I don't think they ever got rebuilt, which is a shame.
Unfortunate. But Strong Machine, but a lot of people thought that was just a gimmick run, and that was, you know, once that ran its course, that'd be it for Strong Machine J, and it would be off to the prelims for the rest of his career with, you know, the rest of the Punch Tamanagas of the world. But no, and you know, even his last big main event match, I thought again was very atypical of what you normally think of a Dragongate style match, you know, and I firmly believe he belongs in that group. And you know, New Japan passed up on him. You know, it's no secret. So, you know, his father, you would think with his father's connection, but obviously New Japan wasn't interested. He ended up with Dragon Gate. And look, I don't think there's any question. He's probably going to end up, when you look back 15, 20 years from now, pushed harder here than he would have been pushed in New Japan. I don't know what he looks like, but, you know, in the face, because that matters a lot in New Japan, and you know, but you would think he would have been a masked wrestler. Maybe they weren't interested in continuing the Strong Machine gimmick.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm guessing they probably just didn't want a masked guy, and they weren't really excited about pushing a masked wrestler as their top star type of thing.
Yeah, it's just not what they do right now. So it's like he ends up here, and I think, you know, ultimately, at least in terms of push, it'll probably work out for him. Money, I don't know, maybe not. Maybe it's better off being a lower mid-card guy in New Japan than being a main eventer in Dragon Gate. I don't know the answer to that. But at any rate, he's in this new Big Six. And now all eyes are going to be on these guys. So, again, I think the theme today, as it's been with New Japan, is new faces in these places getting honest opportunity.
Yeah, it's so good too, and I'm glad that I'm so glad that is the theme, because there was a while there where, and we've had those discussions from 2020 up through, it was really 2020 and 2021, and obviously 2020 throws a whole wrench into things because of the pandemic, but 2021 felt like a year where, you know, now in hindsight, it was a lot of people desperate to collect as much money and as much tickets as they possibly can to make up for what happened in 2020, and the way that a lot of people decided to do that was, we just got to go back to the past, stars of the past. The only way we're going to get people back in these buildings and people back buying our stuff and buying merch and coming to the shows and coming to the is the old guys. And everywhere across Japanese wrestling, it felt like everybody was just so, you know, apprehensive to pushing the next generation and getting those next guys over. And that is not the case anymore, man. 2023 has been a completely different transformation in that way. And a lot of the stuff that I disliked about Japanese wrestling for the last couple of years is almost completely gone. I mean, it almost in every single company too, it has moved on. And instead it's all about the next generation. Okay, we made our money back. We're back. We're stable. Okay, who's up next? Who are the next guys that are going to draw and deliver us into the next decade plus or whatever? And now I am all the way here for it, man. I am all here for it, because I think it's absolutely the way to go, and it's going to make it for a much healthier and a much better wrestling scene that looked very dire at times over the last couple of years. But real quick, go ahead.
It's no secret why, you know, like All Japan and Noah are working closely with one another, and New Japan has loaned out people like Yuji Nagata and Satoshi Kojima to the other groups over the last year and a half, and we're going to get another all together show. And all of these things are happening because the mindset's a little different in Japan, and we've seen this happen during other times of strife and other times of the business being in trouble. The companies will come together and help each other. You know, we've seen Noah and New Japan help each other out with the Muto stuff and everything. You go right down, there's a million examples right now since the pandemic. Whereas in America, that would never happen. You know, it's if you know, we had the pandemic here too, and it's not like you saw WWE reaching out a helping hand to AEW to say, hey, let's pull out of this together. And no, that would never happen here. Okay. Now in Japan, you know, these companies are definitely rivals, and internally in Bushi Road, they see Cyber Fight as a threat. And there was a lot of jealousy with the Muto show outdrawing Wrestle Kingdom. And there was a lot of fear it would outdraw Wrestle Kingdom. But they still were involved and helped. And they still sent Tetsuya Naito to the Carnival finals this week. And you're going to see that in Japan. And we've seen it historically. They're going to try to help each other pull out of this, because the idea is if we help each other and we lift pro wrestling as a whole, we can all get each other out of this.
Yes.
So even though New Japan has this insane, business edge over all these other groups, they're not going to isolate themselves and thumb their nose and tell them all to fuck off. They're going to do what they can to work together while keeping each other at arm's length. Okay, there's still, but that's why you're seeing this in all of these promotions and all of these promotions working together. Naomichi Marufuji worked this Dragongate show.
Yep, Kano did too. Kano was there as well.
Right. So, it's that's why you're seeing this stuff, because I know people have asked us, well, if Bushi Road doesn't want the Muto show to outdraw Wrestle Kingdom, why do they keep sending it? Because it's just a different mindset.
That's just how the business is there. Yeah. And it's happened time and time again. And yeah, it's usually a sign that it's not healthy. You know what I mean? It's usually a sign
that's exactly it.
Yeah.
Yes.
There was a lot of joint shows. If you go back and look at, 2004 to 2010 Japanese wrestling, a lot of joint shows, a lot of and All Japan working together. Whoa, New Japan, a lot of joint shows. Not because the business was healthy, because the business was unhealthy. So yeah, it's makes for fun things. But yeah, everybody would rather just do their own thing and make their own money. But yeah, it's all about everybody else rising up, hopefully, and moving into the future.
And it is arm's length. I mean, there was that funny quote when Kento Miyahara at the All Together presser, and they asked him who he wants to wrestle, and he wouldn't answer. He was scared to answer. The translated answer was something like, "Look, no matter what I say, I'm going to get in trouble with my boss." Right. So it's like, so he just didn't answer it. It's like, it's still very much arm's length and political and all those things, but yeah, they're more apt to help each other out. But kind of got off the point here. I guess we should get back to this Dragongate show.
Yeah, real quick before we go, Case wrote this in his review for Dragongate. I think it's pretty poignant given some of the stuff that we've talked about before. It says Dragongate paid off a 2-year story in the most satisfying way possible. No one had to jump through hoops, overcome odds, or do anything other than win. And over the last year, Kakuta has done a lot of winning. In an era where so many promotions dropped the ball with their version of storytelling, Dragongate reminded us how simple wrestling can be and how satisfying it is when good overcomes evil.
Yeah, I kind of disagree with him a little. I think Kakuta did have to overcome some things, and that's okay. That's classic pro wrestling storytelling. But he's right in the fact that this was just a simple, classic pro wrestling story that anyone can watch and relate to.
Yeah.
Whether you're a wrestling fan or not. And that's the key here. And the other key is they delivered. They stuck the landing.
They finished the story. They finished their story.
Yeah, it's become one of our new pet terms, right? Sticking the landing. And they stuck the landing. And that's what he's trying to say, and it's where some other companies haven't stuck the landing lately. Dragongate did with this one.
All right, we can quickly go through the rest of the show because I don't have a ton of thoughts about a lot of the other matches here. I will say Kano in Dragongate, I think I like it. I think I want Kano in Dragongate all the time. What do you think about this? It was Kongo, it was Kano and Shuji Kondo, who are the Twin Gate champions, and they faced the Z-Brats team of Kai and Ishin, and Kano did Kano things, just stiff fucking kicks, stiff chops. At one point, he busts Ishin open, his mouth's bleeding all over the place, and I gotta say, man, I think I'm all in on Kano being in Dragongate full time. That would rock.
I'm all about Kano being on any show. He should come to Dynamite. He should show up on SmackDown.
Love it.
He should pop up in West Coast Pro and attack Vinny Massaro. He should and stick him in that body bag. He should just send Kano everywhere.
He's pretty good.
The guy's a fucking he's a fucking gem is what he is. I have no issue with Kano popping up anywhere.
I thought this was pretty fun here. 11 minutes, 15 seconds. The Kongo team retains the title. Good stuff here. Just it's exactly. I mean, Kano is hard hitting as hell. Shuji Kondo can still go to a certain level there. So pretty good stuff here. And I thought Ishin was pretty good. Ishin, the Z-Brats. Kai was kind of along for the ride on this match. And I'm not as hard on Kai as I used to be, but in this match, he didn't really need to really do much because it was Ishin getting his ass kicked by Kano and Tsuji Kondo the entire time, which definitely matched the story. So that was cool. And then, I don't know. Is there anything else on the show that really, really stood out to you that you wanted to give some time to, or do you want to just quickly go through the rest of the results?
No, I thought, there wasn't anything else on this show that I thought was anything I would recommend the audience go seek out. The Jason Lee Dragon Dia match was okay, but I was a little let down by it. Doi came back for this show. He was just most recently on the Champion Carnival tour in the Junior Tag Battle of Glory tournament. But he was back for this. Like I said, Marufuji worked this show with Dragon Kid against Yamato and Yoshioka, and then he did a comedy match with Stalker Ishikawa. The Triangle Gate match, did that do much for you? It didn't do much for me. Okay.
Not really. I kind of thought it was. I was a little disappointed. A lot of the other title matches I was a little disappointed by. The Dream Gate I loved, and the Twin Gate I liked as well. Everything else on the show was just kind of okay or just kind of there for me. The Triangle Gate and Triangle Gates usually don't land with me all that much. Like even in the glory days, I was kind of indifferent to a lot of the Triangle Gate matches. But I don't know. This one just didn't. I thought BB Hulk looked good though, and that's kind of where I was going to put my point. That the idea that he was washed a couple years ago, which I think he truly. It felt like okay, they have to take this guy out and it's out back and maybe tell him you got to go, pal. Where Yoshino was still really good, and then his body just couldn't do it anymore, and it was like, man, what a cruel thing that is, where it's like Yoshino can still go, but he just can't. You know what I mean? His body won't do it. And BB Hulk is still going, but it looks like his body just doesn't want to, or he doesn't want to, or whatever. But he's kind of changed that a little bit. He's been better in this gold class run. But that Triangle Gate match did not do a whole lot for me. And I kind of agree with you that Jason Lee and Dragon Dia, I was really excited about that, and it just kind of was there. And I really think Jason Lee is solid as hell, and Dia too, who I think is good. But that just it wasn't bad. It just wasn't. It wasn't a ton, and obviously you had the.
I didn't think anything on the show was bad.
No. Everything was decent, but it's nothing else that I'm like, oh, you got to go out of your way to watch. You got to go out of your way to watch the Dream Gate. I would watch the Twin Gate, and
I'd watch the Twin Gate too.
And then that's probably all that I could say. You absolutely have to watch the Dragon Kid.
You might like the Brave Gate more than we did, maybe. Yeah. But you're not going to be blown away by it.
And then Naomichi Marufuji and Dragon Kid versus Yamato and Yushi Yoshioka was fine. And then Marufuji beat up Ishikawa in 2 minutes after the match too. So you got that. But that's Dragon Gate. Again, for more coverage on Dragon Gate, of course, listen to Open the Voice Gate here on the Voice Wrestling Podcast Network. Also, the review of Dead or Alive up at voicesofwrestling.com from Case. Definitely recommend that for a little bit more details about the Kakuta story and the match with Skywalker. But let's talk about putting new guys over, Joe. All Japan Pro Wrestling Champion Carnival final after what feels like 10 years of this show. And I know it's been from the moment I watched Wrestle 1. I remember the conversation that it was one of the first few times that I watched Wrestle 1. And I said, Joe, I'm all in on this Ashino guy. I don't know if he's going to do anything. I don't know, but I'm planting my flag on Ashino. And it's been a struggle. There's been ups and downs. And obviously Wrestle 1 went away. And then he went to All Japan in one of its most dire times. And I'm thinking, oh man, here we go. He's going to come to All Japan, and they're going to put him over right away because here's this guy who's got charisma. He's a decent enough wrestler. All Japan has nobody else, and they got this guy because Wrestle 1 closed. Here we go. And then it took about 3 years or so until they finally did it, Joe, and they did. Gimme Fuel, Gimme Fire. Shotaro Ashino, the new star of, I'm being told that he injured his arm and he's out for a very long time. Okay, never mind. Sorry. Never mind. Shit.
Man.
Fuck. Fuck. All right.
Man. And,
shit. Really? Fractured ulna?
Yeah.
What?
And I thought it was a great match. And he beat the another company's champion. The GLEAT Tyrannosaurus Rex champion, T-Hawk, or what's it called?
I believe it's the G-Rex, but I like the idea of it being the Tyrannosaurus Rex. I enjoy that too. Yeah, I believe it's the G-Rex title.
I'll tell you, those title matches. I'm a GLEAT guy now. I don't know if you knew.
Are you a full-fledged GLEAT guy?
No.
Oh,
but
damn it.
those
damn it.
Those title matches have been good this year. The GLEAT title matches. They've been I've been watching them.
Yeah,
you know,
you're not ugly guy, but you're not a GLEAT denier anymore, which is good. We needed you to just get to that level. That's okay.
I'm not gonna sit there and watch GLEAT cosplay UWFI.
Oh no! Oh God, no! Easy skip on all those. Easy skip on all those for sure.
You know, this hobby is dorky enough. I've got other shit to do than watch GLEAT cosplay UWFI. But no, so he beats T-Hawk, who in one of the, if not the best match of the carnival, you know, one of the 2 or 3 best matches of the carnival for sure. And unfortunately, we think he broke his arm in the last 30 to 60 seconds of the match there, and he's not going to get the title shot now, and the momentum will be lost by the time he comes back. And that's why it's eerily reminiscent of Finn Balor getting hurt right after winning the Universal title, because we saw what happened. They never put him back in that top spot again. He never even had close to the opportunity to be back in that top spot.
They either never trusted him again, or that was just the right time in the right place. And when he came back, it was like, we moved on. We moved on, and we moved on without you. So sorry, pal.
So much of pro wrestling is timing, and that was the timing, and then the timing was never right again. And now he's a 40-year-old guy who's playing second fiddle to Dominic, you know, and that's just, he'll never be back in that spot again. So you worry about something like this, because when he comes back, I'm not saying that they won't try and go back to him, but this moment is lost. And look, Yuji Nagata is a Triple Crown champion who's ripe for the picking, because he can get sent back to New Japan at any time. So Ashino very well could beat him. He very well could have been earmarked to win that match. I don't think that would have shocked anybody. In fact, I would have made him the betting line favorite in that match, to be completely honest. But now the moment is lost, and it's gut-wrenching. It really is gut-wrenching because of this long climb for this guy. We wrote him off 3 weeks ago. He started off 0-2 in the tournament, and we're like, well, here we go again. They're never going to push this guy, and we sound like buffoons because he comes back and wins the whole goddamn thing, and now this. And it sucks.
Yeah, and it's 2 injuries, too, because as Gerard, co-host of the Emerald Flow show here on the Voice Wrestling Podcast Network, points out in the No Dopes chat room, he also got hurt during the Real World Tag League as well. So he's had 2 major injuries now in the course of 6 months. Like, there's, even if I'm a defender of him, I think they should have pushed him a long time. But, you know, even if I'm All Japan, it's like, I don't know, you know, I don't know if he's cursed, or it's just like, it's going to be tough to build him up again for this moment. You know what I mean? It all kind of came together here. And he cuts the post-match promo, and he's talking shit to Yuji Nagata, and I'm like, man, Yuji Nagata versus Ashino, this is cool as hell, man. That's a good match. And he's a little bit of an asshole. Like, I don't know exactly what he's saying, but I've seen the translated stuff. He's a good little prick. He's good at it. And you could tell from whatever he was saying, like, Yuji Nagata had like, you challenging me? Like, you want to face me? You think you're going to beat me? I'm Yuji Nagata, man. All right, you want to have it? Let's do it. And I was so excited for the match, and it's just never going to happen now. And it sucks.
You know, usually when you're borrowing a guy from another place, it's a set amount of time, and then they got to get back because there's booking plans for them or to work certain tours in their home promotion or whatever. And you have to think that that's the case here. So someone's going to have to beat Yuji Nagata now. And, you know, from that standpoint, do we know how long Ashino is going to be out? Do we have an answer to that?
As far as I could tell, was for the foreseeable future. So he fractured his left ulna, which I believe is, I don't know enough about that particular. It's basically your forearm wrist, basically out. So I think you're in a cast for. He's going to be in a cast for a couple of months for sure. I guess he could kind of come back. It's months, you know what I mean? Like, it's not. I don't know if you're going to be able to hold Yuji Nagata here for 3 months or whatever.
That's my point.
It's probably 3 to 6 months type of stuff. At the best, probably 3 months, and there's no way Yuji Nagata is hanging around for 3 more months.
I mean, the thing about the Real World Tag League is people thought he was going to win that tournament too.
Yeah.
So my point here is you got to beat Nagata with someone, and then maybe you think, all right, well, what's the next best story? Do you put it back on Suwama, since it's been kind of the long-term thing with Ashino? You know, I know he just beat Suwama in the Carnival. I'm just trying to think out loud. I don't, if the plan was to get it to him, and obviously he can't beat Nagata now, because Nagata, you can't just hold Nagata on ice away from New Japan for that long. You need a plan B. So, and the way Ashino's Carnival went, it's funny because knowing what we know now and that he was probably going to beat Nagata. He lost to Manabu Soya and Yuma Anzai, and then he ran the table, right? Soya, forget that one. But it's like, well, maybe they would do his first defense against a guy like Soya, just like a placeholder defense, someone who's never going to beat him. But the Anzai win was interesting. Could that have been a setup to Yuma Anzai challenging or do you think that would have been too soon? These are all things we'll never know now because of this horrible injury. So I will say this too. The show drew 2437 in Ota, which is that's the biggest crowd they've had in that building in years. And they did a nice little crowd, and a lot of these carnival stops, they did some decent under the radar, decent crowds by their standards. Osaka too, they drew very well. They did like 850. And if you recall pre-pandemic, they would have Triple Crown matches in Osaka too and draw like 900. Like they would always run Zeus, because of his history in Osaka. So he'd always either challenge for the title or defend the title in Osaka. And they do like 900 or so. And now they're back to doing that for, random carnival stops. And they just did almost 2,500 in this building. So when we talk about how All Japan has felt fresh and felt different, we're starting to see some results at the box office. So it's not just us goofy Westerners who are just, enjoying the changes versus last year. I think a lot of the stuff they're doing is catching on with fans. So that's something I wanted to make sure I mentioned too, before we moved on to Big Japan. But it's horrible. And now I don't know what they do. Someone else is going to beat Yuji Nagata now. And, it just sucks that they got to tear up all the booking plans. And it probably would have been a lot of interesting things that would have happened with this guy getting his first Triple Crown run.
Yeah. And as a fan of his too, it's just like, God, it's just, man, he finally gets there and just, it's out. And the match was really good too. I love this match. I mean, just a lot. It started off kind of slow, but the last half of this match, like the last 15 minutes or so, were just like high end. Great work. T-Hawk is solid as hell at this point in his career. He's just a solid, good hand that you could put in any situation. He's going to, deliver to some extent. And yeah, they worked their ass off here. They told a good story, and it's just, what sucks too is like, yeah, the match is going on just fine, and then whatever the injury, I pinpointing the exact spot of the injury. I know people have basically figured out it's probably the last 30 seconds, but like he doesn't look immediately like, oh man, I'm fucked. I don't know what happened. I don't know if it was just adrenaline or he was just trying to hide it or whatever. But to show up the next day in an arm sling, it was just like, God damn, how big of a gut punch is that? And All Japan did it right. They told a good story. They put a young guy over. They were ready to move on to something here, and then injuries rear their ugly head. So just an absolute shame. But anything else on the Champion Carnival finals? I did not watch the rest of the show, so I don't know if there's anything that you could recommend or wanted to break down real quick. I only watched the Champion Carnival finals, so I can't speak to any of the other show.
Well, they brought in Naito, which, probably explains the big number they drew, right? The 2,500 in
couldn't hurt.
In that
definitely couldn't hurt.
That Ota City gym. So he worked the semi with Bushi against Kento Miyahara and Yuma Anzai. And I really thought Bushi would eat a pin and they'd give Yuma Anzai a big win, but they didn't go in that direction. So, the New Japan guys won. But, and it was T-shirt Naito, and it was a lot of shtick, but he worked hard by the end. And it was interesting watching him interact with Kento Miyahara and Anzai. But, just putting Anzai in that spot tells you a lot too. So I think they're going to rush Anzai through. I think he's going to get a real legitimate top push probably sooner than we want or expect. Because why the fuck not?
At this point, yeah, you may as well. Everybody knows that he's a guy. Everybody knows that he's a guy. May as well just rip the Band-Aid off and just go for it.
And he's in all these matches that reek of being endorsements. You know what I mean? And it's the other thing is the opener, which is the other match. I've been trying to tell people all year. when these New Japan Young Lions come into All Japan or these other promotions and wrestle the younger wrestlers, this one was Kosei Fujita, Rohei Oiwa, and Yuto Nakashima, who's the ugly one. And they beat Oji Shiiba, Ryu Inoue, and Ryuki Honda. And these New Japan Young Lions, I know I sound like a broken record. When they wrestle on these other shows and these other companies, they are there to show out. And they are there to represent the fucking lion mark. And they work so hard with such intensity. And I know this sounds like a conversation we've had before, but I really wish there was an entire promotion where everyone just wrestled like they do in these matches. It's just so good. It's so good. You get this opener with these young lions out there wanting to prove something. And this was like, there's been 3 or 4 of these matches this year on these non-New Japan shows. And this was like the worst one, and it was still great. And then you sit through the rest of the card with these veterans, and they don't work as hard as these Lions do. And it's like, I wish everyone worked with the same intensity that these guys do in these openers. It's the matches are so good, and I feel like they're trying to upstage the guys from the other company is what it is. I think that those competitive juices start flowing, and they're like, well, no. We're going to be the standouts here. We're fucking New Japan. These guys are working for glorified indies. They're not showing us up. And I think that's the mindset that they go in with. And it's also a chance for them to wrestle someone that isn't each other. They're probably so tired of having these 10-minute draws against each other.
Yeah.
And they get a chance to go in there and just and open up the fucking playbook a little and do some shit that they don't normally get to do. And so I would definitely recommend that match. And Doi defended the junior title. Again, he's freelance now. He's the All Japan Junior Champion. He beat Dan Tamura. That was fine. Doi's had a nice year, but he's kind of the last couple of months not really working at the level that he was earlier in the year. And that was the notable stuff. Minoru Suzuki was back for this one, teaming with Hokuto Omori again. That's been a constant throughout the year. He's still going to, and from what I understand, for most of the year, he's going to be coming in and out, teaming with Omori, and they beat Takeo Omori and Yuma Aoyagi. And it was the rest of the stuff was fine. I skipped the intergender match. Nobody's got time for that bullshit. But other than that, I watched everything, and Manabu Soya versus Kono.
Yeah, I got it. I think I got it.
That's a match where you can definitely slap fast forward on the fucking feed if you're pressed for time. But yeah, no, it was good for, they drew a really good crowd, and the right guy won, and then that bullshit happens. But anyway, that's the Carnival final.
All right, let's end here with Big Japan. We are a Big Japan podcast, if nothing, and we've always been a Big Japan podcast from day one. Man, everybody listening to this, your homework for the week, if you have not seen this match, and it is. I'm not even going to start the show. I'm going to ask every single person listening to they have to let me know that they took the 27 minutes and 40 seconds to watch this match. It's not even. It's an. You have to watch this match. I don't know what else to say. Yuya Aoki, Yuji Okabayashi, Big Japan World Strong Heavyweight title match, 27 minutes and 40 seconds. You have to watch. It's an order. As Sergeant Slaughter would say, that's an order. You got to watch this match. You have to. This is fucking incredible.
I'm going to go a step further. You got to watch this whole fucking show. Rich, I have 4 notebook matches on this show.
I'm watching it in the background as the show is going on, and I don't usually like to do that, but as I've been watching, man, there's a few matches that popped up that I'm like, that's a really good match. There's been a lot of good stuff. So yeah, I now have watched the entire show. So we'll talk about.
There's some matches on this show you need to watch with full attention. This show rocked. This was my favorite show of the week. This was the best of the 4 shows that we're reviewing here.
Endless Survivor, by the way. Big Japan Endless Survivor is the name of the show.
And like I said, almost 2,000 fans in this Yokohama Budokan. Okay? So good for them from that standpoint. I got to tell you, there was only one bad match on this show. And listen, people know I'm not a big deathmatch guy.
Do you watch the death matches too?
I watched the whole show.
Wow.
This whole show rocked. With
Okay, because there was a
exception-
death match that I thought was incredible, and I'm curious if you agree with me on the one. Hopefully, I think so. I think you do.
I will quickly take you through the two openers. There was a 6-man tag opener, which was perfectly fine, 3-star opener. Then they did a death match opener, which was a barbed wire match, I think, with a bunch of guys who aren't really being pushed right now, who sometimes are pushed, like Ryuji Ito was on the winning side. It was Wakamatsu Ito and Takashi Sasaki versus Kankuro Hoshino, Minoru Fujita, and Yuichi Taniguchi. And that was fine. Another perfectly fine 3.25-star match. Then there's a match with a bunch of names. You got Taz's favorite wrestler, Andy Wu, with Yasufumi Nakanoe and Ryota Hama, who is larger every time I see him. I don't know how it's possible.
Fucking gigantic. And you're probably thinking, yeah, guys, he's gigantic. We know. No, I'm telling it's a different level. He's getting too big. He's getting that Yokozuna in like 1998 thing where you're like, you can't.
I'm scared for him.
Yeah, it's not good.
I wouldn't be surprised if there's horrible news on the timeline at any minute. He's just obscenely overweight. It's something has to be done. Daishi Hashimoto, Diamanji So, and Daisuke Sakamoto were on the other side. Shockingly, that was the second worst match on the show. When on paper, you would think, oh, that's probably a good little match. TLC, they called this a TLC match with Takeda, Masashi Takeda, and Takumi Tsukamoto against Michio Kageyama and Yusaka Ito. Very good match. Anything with Takeda at minimum is going to be pretty good. And now this is where the business picks up on this fucking card.
Okay. So you're with me on this Iron Cage death match, right?
Notebook.
Yes, I went forward. This match ruled. These guys are flying and doing a death match at the same time. It's hard to describe, but you have to watch it. You have to.
Iron Cage death match. They've got a fucking cage in the middle of the ring,
which they had to set up. It took a long time to set this cage up, for the record, but it well worth it. Well worth it.
They're locking each other in the cage. They're diving off the cage. I don't know the rules. Listen, I don't speak Japanese. I don't know what's happening here, except what's happening is awesome. That's what's happening in this match. Guys are flying around. They're flying off the cage. They're locking each other in the cage. It's Yankee Tukenju, which is Asami Kodaka and Yuko Miyamoto. These guys cross my radar a half a dozen times a year, and they never let me down. They've been a quality tag team for what? Fucking forever.
It's
now?
It has certainly been a while, and yeah, those guys they remind me of Funori Abe, where it's like every time I watch them, I'm like, I like these guys. Why don't I just watch them more? Like every time I watch them, I enjoy them. I should just watch them more. They come to the ring, and I'm like,
you're never going to pay for core. That's why you don't watch.
But yeah, that's true.
That's
okay.
what it comes down to. Okay, so the opponents here were Kazumi Kakuta and Yuki Ishikawa. Can I sit here and tell you I'm intimately familiar with these men? I'm not. But this match fucking rocked, and I'm with you. I went 4 stars flat, and and I went into it thinking I was just enduring this shit until I got to the main event. But as this card's moving along, I'm like, I think I really like this fucking card. And then the junior title match is next, and it's Kota Sekafuda defending against Kaiji Tomato. And I don't like Kaiji Tomato. I think he's a little fucking dork, and he annoys me with his stupid pom-poms. He's very much not a Joe Lanza wrestler. I mean, that people can see pretty. I mean, he's got those dopey tomato pom-poms. He does his stupid little cheerleader dance.
Oh, during the pandemic, you were a Kaiji Tomato guy. I mean, you had to be because there was nobody else.
He had those good matches in 2AW. I'm not, but like his persona and everything, I don't like the guy. Okay, he's annoying. Like I want Stan Hansen. I don't want a guy out there with tomato pom-poms. But in all caps, this match fucking rocked.
God, this match was good. How good was this match?
Yeah, it fucking rocks. It's like I don't like this guy, but then he has good matches. And but at the same time, then he has matches that I'm giving like -2 stars because he works soft as a feather and he does too much stick. But when this guy, I mean, this ruled. This match,
and these guys are tag partners usually, and I think that may have played into it too because they were a little more stiff and a little bit more. And that's all wrestlers will always tell you that. With your friends, you're always a little more stiff and always a little bit more snug because they can take it, and they'll be cool with it or whatever type of thing. And yeah, these guys, this was snug. You know what I mean? And I know what you're talking about with Kaiji Tomato, and sometimes he does work, light as a feather, whatever. But yeah, these two guys went out there and they had a pretty hard hitting match and a good one too. Almost 20 minutes. it did seem to it seemed like it went by a lot quicker than 20 minutes. It was 17 minutes and 32 seconds, but yeah, really, really good. I just under Notebook for me. I went 3.5 with that one, but yeah, no, that's a match to definitely check out if you got a chance.
Very dramatic down the stretch. I liked it a shade better than the Iron Cage death match. And that brought us into the tag team title match, which was undisputably a great match. Astronauts always deliver. Funari Abe, Takuya Nomura. All Japan made a play. They tried to steal Nomura. Didn't work out. They defended the titles here against Hiroyuki Suzuki and Tsukuho Kato. And this fucking rocked. I went 4.25 on this. It was one of the best matches I saw all week, even on with all these 4 big shows. And as I said, Astronauts always deliver. You know, they're just similar to Yankee Tukenju, but they're even better. They're a better team than Kodaka and Miyamoto. And, you know, and you know, this is great. I mean, I couldn't even kill you if you thought this was almost as good as the main. You know,
impossible.
You know, so
impossible.
it's I would say if you're going to go out of your way to watch the main event, you may as well, at minimum, at least watch this tag match too, because there's no way you won't enjoy it. I mean, it's just kick-ass tag team wrestling. And I know we're short on time. Then they did the deathmatch title match, which was Abdullah Kobayashi and Hideyoshi Kimitani. And I thought this fucking sucked, and it was by far the worst match in the show.
Yeah, I hated this. I thought this was bad and slow and just, yeah.
It was terrible.
Really.
And
Kobayashi is fucking brutal. It's, what are we doing?
He's impossible to watch. He stinks. It's, and if people think it's just because I don't like deathmatch, need I remind you?
Iron Cage deathmatch. Iron Cage deathmatch.
Well, yeah, no, forget just 10 minutes ago. But I have to remind people here that I gave that Hideyoshi Kamitani versus Ryuji Ito match from January 4.25 stars, and we talked about it on this show. So it's not like because remember, Kamitani had 2 matches in 3 days. He had the strong title match against Yuji Okabayashi on the 2nd, which rocked. And then he came right back with the deathmatch title match 2 days later against Ito, and that rocked too.
Right, he's one of those guys like Takeda, who's a good wrestler that does death matches type of thing, as opposed to just being a deathmatch guy. And that's Alex Colon I put in a similar category, but Takeda is like the guy that you look at. Where Kadoka you could put in too. You know, those are guys that are just actual good wrestlers that happen to do death matches.
Yeah, so this isn't just my deathmatch bias. This match fucking sucked.
It's slow as hell. The spots, I mean, even the build up to the big death spots and explosions were just long and convoluted. And yeah, Kobayashi is fucking brutal. He's terrible.
Yeah. And so and that brings us to the main event, which I mean,
oh my God.
And again, Yuya Aoki, they're giving a new guy a shot here, and it follows the trend of the week in Japan. And look, the only thing stopping this from being a serious contender in our poll at the end of the year for a top 10 match is exposure, because not enough people are going to see it.
Yeah, I'm going to try it. I'm going to try my best by demanding all of you go and find this. And there's some people in the Noto chat room says, well, how can I watch Big Japan? And it's like, you can subscribe to Core, but a little bit of work, a little bit of searching, you can find Big Japan if you need to.
You can find this match if you need to.
Yes, this match specifically will be able to be found.
Just slip into some DMs and figure it out. Okay, just fucking figure it out. How much is Core? Buy a month of Core. I mean, what's
right? Yeah, they need it. Honestly, they're raising money for their bus, so they could probably use you
know what? And honestly, they deserve it because they've been pretty good all year, and this show rocked. You know, this show really did fucking rock from top to bottom. And I thought it was the best show of the week in a packed week. And this match, and Aoki, you know, Okabayashi is still top form. Sekimoto is clearly on the downside. He's not the same wrestler he used to be. Okabayashi is still the same guy. He had the draw with Sekimoto last month. And I haven't gotten to that match yet, but I'm told it's which doesn't surprise me because they had a match last year, which was kind of They played the hits, but Sekimoto just isn't that guy anymore. But Okabayashi is. And this Yuya Aoki, he don't look the part of a world champion. He's a pudgy little guy. You know, he doesn't have overwhelming charisma, but holy shit, was he great in this match. And it was dramatic and it was hard hitting. And I love that spot where Okabayashi went for the top rope splash and Aoki got those knees up. And you've seen that spot 10,000 times. The way Aoki sold the knee damage from this fucking gigantic husk of a
much
man
larger guy.
on
Yeah, it's one of those ones where he said, this will be a good idea, and then he did it and goes, oh, that was not a good idea. I should not have done that.
He saved himself, but he sacrificed his body part, you know? And it's like his selling was so good, and the drama was
he's mouth, his blood is pouring from his mouth because Okabayashi's just beating the living shit out of him.
Battering him. Because it is Big Japan strong. I mean, it's still that same fucking vibe. That
BJ Strong. BJ Strong, baby.
And, yeah, man. Strong BJ. And,
or Strong BJ. Sorry.
Well, Strong BJ was the tag team. And, it's, anyway, people get the idea. And then I watched it unspoiled. So it's like that added to it for me because I never thought this guy would win. And he won. And, fuck if I'm not going to seek out his title challengers. I mean,
for sure.
His title defenses. And it's like, Big Japan for a while wasn't on our radar. In between, pandemic, it certainly was because they were one of the only places running. And we got enough Daishi Hashimoto during the pandemic to fucking
last us forever.
But
a lot of.
Then they just kind of faded away because they weren't hot and they weren't doing anything special. And the yearly Okabayashi Sakamoto match, you'd go, okay, for old time's sake, I'll pop that one on. But other than that, and maybe an astronaut tag here or there, but this is exciting for them. They drew a nice house. They've got a new world champion, and the crowd popped big for it, and the show looked big time. The show looked big time in that building, and there was actually fans in the building.
Yeah, they lit it well. The fans sounded good. It looked like and there was some real dire Big Japan shows I remember watching as well. So credit to them for getting out of that, where it really felt like. I was pretty sure we were going to do hey, Big Japan has died, here's memories of the company type of thing. It looked like they were getting pretty close to that. So to see them, see it through and be where they're at now and have a show like this that, is being well received everywhere that you're seeing, and a match that's being as well received. And I know Dave Meltzer talked about he had watched it a couple of days ago as well. So that should hopefully help it a little bit. And I'll try to help it as well because this is a match that needs to be seen. If you're a wrestling fan of any level, I think 2023, you should not end your year not having seen this match. It was that good.
If you're like a person who likes to track match of the year and things like that, this match is essential. You have to find this match. You just have to watch it. You have to. It's like when Rich tells me there's a Joshi match that, okay, this one you have to watch. Like I'm telling you guys who don't pay attention to Big Japan, if you're serious about watching all the best stuff in a given year, you cannot skip this match. You have to watch it. That's all there is to it. I went 4 3/4 on this.
Yeah, I'm 4 3/4 too. A little 5-star fear there, but that's fine. 4 3/4 is still a fucking tremendous match, and yeah, just the emotion of it too was great because I watched it unspoiled as well, which helped a lot. I think so I watched it later, and I guess I forgot who won. You know what I mean? It was like I went in unspoiled in the sense that I think I knew who won, but then halfway through I was like, wait a minute, I don't know if I know who wins this match, which is good. That's fine, good. I don't even want to look it up. I'm good. And when Aoki took one of the hardest lariats you will ever see, like Stan Hansen-esque, top of the forehead lariat. He just plummets to the ground. His mouth is filled with blood. Okabayashi goes over to pin him, and he kicks out at 1, and the crowd just explodes. And God damn, was that so good? It's a match that demands to be seen. I mean, just perfect structure, like you said, well booked, well worked. Both guys delivered big. The crowd's hot. You got to watch it. You just have to. Yeah, great match. I think I do that notebook roundup article, which by the way, the April edition will be coming out. I watched Triple Mania today, so I knocked that off. I've still got to watch the Impact. What was that called? Whatever their last pay-per-view was called. I still have to watch that. And there's a couple indie matches I want to get in from April, and then that'll be wrapped up in the next day or two. And then I'll have the article out, $10 tier, because people have enjoyed those. So I'm going to keep them going. The April notebook roundup. I give myself a self-imposed deadline of the 15th of the following month to get it out. Today's the 11th. So I'll have that out sometime over the weekend. But what I was going to say was when I get around to doing May,
next month, there's a good chance this is going to be the number one match of May.
Oh, it's going to be hard to beat. Yeah, I mean,
it's going to be really hard to beat.
Double or Nothing, obviously Double or Nothing's coming. Yeah, right.
So that's where you put, because I don't know, we don't know the Double or Nothing card. Something on Double or Nothing is probably going to be the only thing that has a shot, because the Super Junior Tour is fun, but nothing really peaks that high until the final. So I don't expect any Super Junior matches to hit this level.
Did you like this better than Mox and Omega in the cage?
It's close, but I went 4.5 plus on the cage match, and I went 4 3/4, which is essentially the same fucking rating. It's just
it makes you feel better. It makes you feel better.
Yeah. So I think they're about equal. Yeah, they're very different, because one's a traditional world title match, and the other is a bloodbath in a cage with a great angle. You know what I mean? So it's like very different. So I don't know. I'm going to be a coward and not give you an answer. But I rated this match higher.
Yeah, I guess you'll have to decide when you sit down and write it out. You'll just have to decide then. And it's a good problem to have. I'll say that. Good problem to have. The very idea that you're going to sit down and think of is Jon Moxley versus Kenny Omega in a cage match, or insert Double or Nothing match, or Big Japan, Okabayashi versus Aoki. Yeah. Like, the fact that that's even in the mix is pretty fucking cool. So good on Big Japan. And yeah, having watched through this entire show, I do want to watch some of the matches over again when I'm able to actually listen to them and give my full attention. But looks like a hell of a show. So we talked about this in January. I think we're gonna have to stick with Big Japan this year.
They're having a good year.
Yeah, we can't ignore them this year.
The problem is access. That's all. That's the only issue. It's kind of, when they rolled out Core a few years ago, that kind of killed a lot of Big Japan's buzz, because a lot of people just weren't willing to pay for it. Big Japan, before New Japan World, and then everybody followed the leader and rolled out their own, and we were in the world of uploads and everything. Big Japan was far more prominent because it was more accessible. Core really hurt them in that regard. Now, I'm sure they don't give a shit, because they're,
they'd rather make money as opposed to a bunch of people pirating all their shit.
Watch it for free.
Right.
But I think of all the companies that have rolled out streamers, it's hurt their visibility in the West. I mean, I don't know what's going on in Japan. I can't speak for Japan. But for the Western wrestling fan, I think Big Japan was the easiest one for people to say it's on the I don't watch it anymore pile once Core rolled out. So, but anything I've seen this year has been good. Whereas the last couple years, it's like I would dabble, and it's like, there was a reason I wasn't watching this. You know what I mean?
All right, so that is Big Japan, and that is the Flagship Podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening, of course. Thank you guys so much for your support, everything we do here at the Flagship Podcast, as well as flagshippatreon.com, patreon.com/voicesofwrestling, voicesofwrestling.com/patreon. As we mentioned, we have the instant reaction live for last night's Dynamite. That is up on the $10 tier at flagshippatreon.com. A brand new episode of Sky's the Limit, my Cruiserweight Classic retrospective series, coming very soon. Plenty of other stuff up there as well. And, of course, it's a great month to subscribe, because at the end of May, you're going to get an instant reaction live for AEW Double or Nothing. That is our one and only time that we're going to review all of Double or Nothing. You can listen live, and it's always a real fun atmosphere after pay-per-views. The chat room's always lively. There's always a ton of people in there talking about wrestling and discussing the show. So good or bad, it's always a fun time for the instant reaction live. So yeah, we'll do that in the end of May for Double or Nothing. Of course, voicesofwrestling.com for previews, reviews, columns. The Voice Wrestling Podcast Network. Make sure you subscribe on your podcast app of choice. And that is it for us. So that is Joe. I am Rich. We will talk to you next time on the Flagship Podcast. Take care.
Hi, I'm Case Lowe, co-host of the Open the Voice Gate podcast. The one question I'm constantly asked when it comes to Dragongate is, how do I get into the promotion? Well, stop asking and start listening to the Open the Voice Gate podcast, released every Wednesday on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. For exclusive news and show reviews, look no further than the leader in Dragongate coverage, Open the Voice Gate.
Hello, Voices of Wrestling listener. Dave Ryan here. Have you ever wondered to yourself how many hidden gems are hidden away inside the last years of World Championship Wrestling? Have you ever asked yourself how many tenuous gags can be made about the name Mike Enos? And have you ever thought about what it sounds like for two Irishmen to interpret a very chaotic company through its B show? The answers to all this and more are just a click away. Check out Days of Thunder every second Thursday on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network.